My name is Claire, and I'm from Mercersburg, Pennsylvania. I moved back here 6 months ago after the divorce. Richard got the house in Harrisburg, which was fine by me. I didn't want it anyway. Didn't want any of those memories. The way he'd sigh when I brought work home. The way he'd ask if I was ever going to take a day off. So I came back to the place I grew up. Got a little apartment above the hardware store on Main Street, and threw myself into the only thing I've ever been good at, which is fixing old stone. The Historical Society hired me right away. There's always work for someone who knows how to restore marble without making it look new, who can match a 100-year-old inscription style by eye. They gave me the old Methodist cemetery first, then the Pioneer Burial Ground out on Route 16. Last month, they offered me the Soldiers' Cemetery. It's not much of a place, really. Just a half-acre of leaning headstones behind what's left of the old Lutheran church, the one that burned in '83 and never got rebuilt. The cemetery's been there since 1864 for the boys who died at the training camp outside town. Most of them weren't even soldiers yet, just kids who got measles or pneumonia or some infection from the latrines. There's maybe 80 stones total, granite mostly, some marble. The Historical Society got a grant to restore them before the anniversary next year. I was supposed to survey the damage, photograph everything, make a work plan. Simple job. Should have taken 3 weeks, maybe 4. I liked it out there from the start. It's quiet. Real quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the wind moving through different kinds of grass. The tall, dry stuff makes one sound, the shorter green stuff another. There's a hedge of hawthorn along the back that's gone completely wild. Grows in these tangled knots like it's trying to fence something in. Or out, I guess. The stones are close together, military neat, but the grounds haven't been kept up in years. Vines everywhere. Moss thick as carpet on the north faces. I set up my tripod the first day, started working row by row, documenting the damage. Crack in the base of Private J.W. Miller, 1863. Flaking inscription on Corporal Thomas Green. Staining on half a dozen others from where the oak tree used to stand. I made notes in my little field book, took measurements with my calipers, all methodical. That's how I work. No rush, no shortcuts. My routine was the same every day. I'd get up at 6, grab coffee from the place on the square, be at the cemetery by 7:30, when the light was still soft. Work till noon, drive home for lunch and to charge my camera, back by 2. Work till the light started to go, usually around 6:30 this time of year. The apartment's only 10 minutes away, straight down 416 and left on Church Street. I know that drive so well I could do it in my sleep. Probably have some days. Been so tired my eyes were closing at the stop sign by the old elementary school. The first week was just documentation. I didn't touch any of the stones, just cataloged. I had a system. Numbered each marker with chalk, took 5 photos, full face, close-up of inscription, both sides, top. Measured height, width, thickness, noted material, condition, type of damage. Wrote down what I planned to do. Consolidate the flaking marble on green stone, clean the biological growth off the McIntyre brothers' shared marker, repoint the base on the captain's obelisk, that kind of thing. I kept all my notes in a waterproof field book, the kind with the orange cover. I've been using the same kind for 15 years. Second week, I started the actual work. Began with the easy ones, just cleaning, soft brushes, biocide solution, gentle water spray. You can't rush stone. It tells you what it needs if you listen. I got into a rhythm. Up at 6, coffee, work, lunch, work, home by 7. Make something simple for dinner, ramen usually, or those frozen pot pies. Watch something mindless on my laptop while I upload photos. Fall asleep by 10. Richard used to say I lived like a monk. I guess he wasn't wrong. But I like the solitude. Always have. It was a Wednesday, I think. Maybe Thursday. The days kind of blur when you're working like that. I remember it was overcast, that flat gray sky that makes everything look the same all day. I got to the cemetery around 7:40, parked my van in the usual spot by the gap in the hedge, grabbed my toolbox and the jug of water I bring for cleaning, walked to row 3, where I'd been working on Private Samuel Drexler's stone. I'd cleaned it the day before, got most of the lichen off. My plan was to work on the inscription, fill in the worn letters with a consolidant. I set my toolbox down, and that's when I saw it. The stone was done. Not just cleaned, done. The inscription work was finished, each letter carefully filled and tooled to match the original carving. The consolidant was still tacky to the touch, which meant it had been applied recently, maybe within the last hour. But that was impossible. I'd been the only one there, and I'd left at 6 the night before. I stood there for a minute, just staring. The work was good, really good. Better than good. It was exactly how I would have done it. The same technique I use, the same materials. I could see the brush strokes, tiny and precise, the way I always load my brush halfway up the bristles to get the right flow. It was my work. I knew it like I know my own handwriting. I looked around. Cemetery was empty. Just the wind, the grass, the stones. I checked my field book. Sure enough, there was my note. Drexler, consolidate inscription, match original serif style, use 15% paraloid solution. My plan, my handwriting. But I had no memory of doing the work, none at all. I figured I must have done it at the end of the day yesterday, and just forgotten. I'd been tired, sure, but that tired? That didn't seem right. But what other explanation was there? I touched the stone again. The consolidant was definitely fresh. I could smell it, that sharp chemical smell that lingers for a few hours after application. If I'd done it yesterday evening, it would have been cured by now. I packed up early that day, went home, made coffee instead of lunch, sat at my kitchen table with my field book open, went through every page. My notes were all there, all in order. But when I got to the Drexler entry, there was something odd. Next to my original plan, in the margin, I'd written completed and the date, my handwriting, my blue pen. But I had no memory of writing it. I don't forget work. I don't forget finishing something. That's not how my mind works. I remember every chip, every crack, every minute I spend on a stone. It's like my memory carves itself into the marble alongside the inscription. That night, I slept bad. Woke up at 3 in the morning with my heart pounding, thinking I'd heard something. But it was just the wind, probably. The apartment's old, makes noise. I got up, looked out the window at Main Street, empty and dark. Went back to bed eventually. Next morning, I got to the cemetery at the usual time, parked in the usual spot. Walked to row 4, where I'd planned to start on Private William H. Yates. I'd only photographed it the day before, hadn't even cleaned it yet. But when I got there, the stone was clean. Not just a quick rinse, either. Deep clean, biocide applied, moss removed from the base, the whole thing. The stone was still damp in the crevices, meaning it had been done recently. I touched it. Cold, wet. My gloves came away with that faint green stain you get from fresh moss removal. I looked at my toolbox. My spray bottle was full, just like I'd left it. But someone had used a spray bottle. Same kind, same solution by the smell of it. The work was perfect. My technique, my approach. I stood there for a long time, 10 minutes maybe, just trying to think it through. Could someone else be working the site? I called the Historical Society. Linda answered, she's the administrator. I asked if they'd hired a second restorer, maybe someone doing night work. She laughed. On our budget? Claire, you're it. Why, you need help? I said no, just wondering. She told me to take my time. The grant covered 3 months. No rush. I tried to put it out of my mind. Maybe I was sleepwalking. I'd heard of people doing things in their sleep, driving even. But I'd never done that before. never even been a sleep talker. Still, it was a logical explanation. More logical than someone sneaking into a cemetery at night to restore headstones using my exact methods. That was just... what would be the point? Who would do that? I decided to set up a test. That afternoon, I left a stone partially done. Private Jacob Horner, 1862. I'd cleaned the face but left the inscription work for the next day. I took detailed photos before I left, noted the exact condition in my book. I even put a little piece of tape on the stone, just a tiny bit, to see if it would be disturbed. Then I went home, made dinner, watched some show about house flipping, went to bed early, set my alarm for 6, same as always. When I got to the cemetery the next morning, the Horner stone was finished. The inscription work was perfect, every letter sharp and clean. The tape was gone. My field book had a new entry. Horner, consolidation complete, 9:47 p.m. My handwriting, my watch notation style. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember doing the work. But my body felt tired. The kind of tired you get after hours of fine brushwork, that ache in your shoulders and neck. I touched the stone. The consolidant was fully cured, which meant it had been applied at least 8 hours ago. The timing fit. If I'd done it at 9:47 p.m., like my note said, it would be ready by 7:30 a.m. I sat down right there on the grass. My legs felt weird. Not weak, exactly, but like they belonged to someone else. I looked at my hands. There was stone dust under my nails. Not a lot, just a trace. That fine white powder that gets into every crevice. I always wear gloves, always. But there it was, and my right thumb had a tiny cut, fresh, like I'd scraped it on a rough edge. That happens sometimes, even with gloves, but I didn't remember it happening. I started checking things. My van's odometer. I'd been tracking my mileage for the grant report. Monday, 47 miles. Tuesday, 48 miles. Wednesday, 95 miles. I stared at that number. 95 miles. That was impossible. The cemetery was 5 miles from my apartment. 10 miles round trip. Even if I'd gone home for lunch, that's 20 miles a day. Wednesday should have been 20 miles, maybe 22, not 95. I got out my grant log, where I write down every trip. Monday and Tuesday were correct. Wednesday just said cemetery and home. No extra trips, but the odometer doesn't lie. I'd driven somewhere. 47 extra miles. That afternoon, I didn't work. I drove back to my apartment, trying to retrace any route I might have taken in some kind of fugue state. I went out 416, same as always. Turned left on Church Street, past the old elementary school, the vacant lot where the grocery store used to be, the row of houses with those big front porches. Everything looked normal. I didn't recognize anything unusual. No strange parking lots where I might have left my car, no side roads that called to me. Just the same 10-minute drive I'd been making for a month. I called my sister that night. Sarah. She lives in Pittsburgh, works in marketing. We don't talk much, not since the divorce. She took Richard's side, or maybe I just pushed her away, but I needed to hear a voice that wasn't my own. I told her I'd been working a lot, maybe too much. Told her I was having some memory lapses. She got that worried tone. "Claire, are you okay? Do you need to see someone?" I said no, probably just tired, but I could hear the concern in her voice, the way she drew out my name. Claire. Like she was talking to a child. I regretted calling almost immediately. We hung up after 10 minutes, promised to talk more soon. I knew we wouldn't. That night I tried to stay awake. I made coffee at 9, then another pot at 11, sat at my kitchen table with my field book, going over every entry. At midnight, I decided to drive out to the cemetery, just to see. I don't know what I expected to find. Myself, maybe. standing there with a brush in my hand. But the place was empty. I parked, left the headlights on, walked through the rows. Nothing, just stones and grass and that constant wind. I touched a few markers. Cold, dry, no fresh work. I got back in my van at 12:30 and drove home. Felt foolish. But when I checked the odometer, I'd added another 11 miles. That made sense. To the cemetery and back. So why the extra 47 miles from Wednesday? I didn't sleep. Lay in bed listening to the apartment settle, the creak of the old floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator. My body ached like I'd been working all night. That specific soreness in my forearms from holding a brush at the right angle, in my back from leaning over stones. But I'd been awake. I was sure of it. I think I was sure. Thursday morning, I got to the cemetery late. 8:30 instead of 7:30. I was exhausted, my eyes grainy. I didn't even get coffee, just drove straight there. When I walked through the gap in the hedge, I saw something that stopped me. There were 3 stones in row 5 that I'd barely touched. I'd planned to start them next week, but now they were clean. Not just a rinse, but properly cleaned, biocided, moss removed. The kind of work that takes hours. I walked over, touched each one. Damp in the cracks, freshly done. My spray bottle was still in my toolbox, untouched. But someone had used a spray bottle, same kind, same solution. I could smell it. I looked at my watch, 8:40. If the work had been done recently, I might catch someone. I walked the perimeter, checked behind the hedge, looked in the little copse of trees at the far end. Nothing. No one. Just my van, parked where I'd left it. I went back to the stones, took photos. The work was immaculate. My technique, my pattern of brush strokes visible in the cleaning pattern. I've been doing this long enough to recognize my own hand, and it was mine. I knew it was. I called Linda at the Historical Society, told her something strange was happening, that work was getting done when I wasn't there. She was quiet for a moment. Claire, no one else has access. You have the only key. I know that, I said. I know. She asked if I wanted to take a few days off. I said no. I needed to figure this out. She said okay, but to call if I needed anything. Her voice had that same tone as Sarah's. That worried, talking to a child tone. I decided to change my routine. Instead of leaving at 6, I left at 9. Took the morning slow. Had a real breakfast at the diner, read the paper, got to the cemetery at 10. The same 3 stones were there, still damp. I worked on a different one. Private David O'Connor, 1864. Spent the whole day just cleaning, taking my time. By 5, I'd made good progress, but it wasn't finished. I packed up, left everything as it was. Took a photo of the stone's condition. Noted the time, 5:12 p.m. I didn't go home. I parked my van down the road, just around the bend where I could see the cemetery entrance but not be seen. Turned off the engine. Waited. The sun went down around 7:30. It got cold. I had a blanket in the back, pulled it around my shoulders. My phone died around 9. I'd forgotten to charge it. Just sat there, watching. Nothing moved. No cars passed. The cemetery was dark, just a shape against the darker trees. Around 10, I got out to stretch my legs. That's when I noticed my jacket. I was wearing my work jacket, the canvas one with all the pockets. It smelled of stone dust. Not just a little. It smelled like I'd been grinding marble all day. That specific chalky smell that gets into the fabric. And there were fresh abrasions on the elbows, like I'd been leaning on rough granite. I touched them. The threads were frayed, new. I looked at my hands, more stone dust under the nails, a fresh scrape on my knuckle. But I'd been sitting in the van for 5 hours. I hadn't touched a stone. I know I hadn't. I got back in the van, drove home. It was after 11. I didn't check the odometer. Didn't want to. I just wanted to sleep. Took a shower, the water running brown with stone dust for a minute before it ran clear. I watched it circle the drain. I don't remember working, I thought, but my body remembers. Friday morning, I woke up at 6 without an alarm. My body just woke up, like it always does. I lay there for a minute, thinking about staying in bed, but I got up, made coffee, drove to the cemetery. The O'Connor stone was finished. The cleaning I'd started was complete, and the inscription had been consolidated. The work was perfect. My plan executed exactly as I'd written it in my field book. I touched the stone. The consolidant was tacky, fresh, done recently. I looked at my watch. 7:30. If someone was doing this, they were doing it at night after I left, or before I arrived, or maybe I was doing it myself and not remembering. That seemed the most likely explanation, as unlikely as it felt. I decided to test it. I went home, got my laptop, set up a camera. I have this old GoPro I use for documentation sometimes. Set it on a tripod in the back of my van, pointed it at the cemetery entrance, left it recording. Then I went home and tried to stay awake again. I made coffee at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. I was determined to not sleep, to watch the recording live on my laptop. But the connection kept dropping. The Wi-Fi out there is spotty at best. At 10, I gave up on the live feed, just let it record. I sat at my kitchen table with another pot of coffee, my field book, my photos spread out. I was looking for something, anything, that would tell me I was doing this work myself. A photo that showed a stone partially done that was now complete. Proof that I was forgetting my own actions. At midnight, I must have fallen asleep. Just for a second, I thought. But when I opened my eyes, it was 4 a.m. The apartment was dark except for the light over the stove. My laptop had gone to sleep. I woke it up, checked the recording. It was still going, the little red dot showing active. I scrubbed back through the footage. Nothing. Just darkness, the vague shape of the hedge. Then at 2:17 a.m., the camera moved. Just a little, like someone had bumped the tripod. But there was no one there. The frame just shifted slightly, then held steady. I watched the rest. Nothing else. No movement, no lights, no person. Just the dark cemetery and that one tiny shift at 2:17. I drove out there at 4:30, still dark. The camera was exactly where I'd left it, tripod steady, but the lens had a smudge on it, a fingerprint. I wiped it away without thinking, then realized what I'd done. Evidence, maybe. But of what? That I'd touched my own camera? I walked to the O'Connor stone. The consolidant was curing nicely. I touched it, still slightly soft. If I'd done it at 2:17, it would feel like this. If I'd done it. I went home, slept for 3 hours. Woke up at 9, drove back. I didn't work that day. Just walked around, looked at every stone, counted them. 83, I knew that. But I counted anyway. I looked at each one, tried to remember its condition from when I'd started. Hard to recall now. Some that I'd thought were damaged looked better than I remembered. Was I misremembering? Or had they been fixed? I checked my photos. Compared them to what I saw. Private Hiram Stone's marker, for instance. I had a photo from the first day, showed significant flaking on the top edge, but now it looked not new, but stable. Consolidated. I touched it. Fully cured. Days old, at least. But I had no memory of doing it. No record in my field book. No photos of the work in progress. Just the finished result. Saturday, I stayed home. Called Linda. Told her I needed the weekend off. She said that was fine. Take care of myself. I sat in my apartment and tried to piece together what was happening. The logical part of my brain said I was overworked, stressed from the divorce, maybe having some kind of dissociative episode. People do things they don't remember when they're under stress. I'd read about it. The other part, the part that knows stone, knew that this was my work. No one else could replicate my technique so perfectly. The angle of the brushstrokes, the way I always work left to right on inscriptions, the specific pressure I use when consolidating. It's muscle memory. Developed over 15 years. You can't fake that. Sunday night, I set an alarm for 2 a.m. If I was going to the cemetery, I'd catch myself in the act. I went to bed at 10, slept hard. The alarm woke me at 2. I got up, dressed, drove out there. The cemetery was empty. I walked every row, checked every stone. Nothing fresh, nothing new. I sat in my van until 4, then drove home. The odometer showed 22 miles. Perfect. To and from, plus a little extra for idling. I felt relieved, like maybe the week had been some weird fluke, some combination of exhaustion and imagination. Monday morning, I got to the cemetery at 7:30. Started working on Captain Nathaniel Frost's obelisk. It needed repointing at the base, some serious cleaning. Big job, would take all week. I worked steady, took breaks like normal. At 5, I packed up, left everything neat, drove home, made dinner, watched a show, went to bed at 10. Tuesday morning, the Frost obelisk was finished. Not just the work I'd started, the whole thing. Repointed, cleaned, consolidated. Perfect. My plan, executed completely. The mortar was still curing in the joints, which meant it had been done recently, within the last few hours. I touched it, still slightly warm from the chemical reaction. I looked at my watch, 7:30. If I'd done it at 5 this morning, it would feel like this. My field book had a new entry. Frost obelisk, complete, 5:03 a.m. My handwriting, my pen, my shorthand. I flipped back through the pages. Every stone that had been finished had a similar entry, all in my hand, all timed between midnight and 6 a.m. I had no memory of writing any of them. But there they were. I called Sarah, told her everything. The work, the memory lapses, the odometer. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Claire, you need to see a doctor. This doesn't sound right. Maybe it's something neurological." I said maybe. She asked if I wanted her to come stay for a few days. I said no. I needed to figure this out myself. She said she was worried. I said I was too. Wednesday, I didn't go to the cemetery. I stayed home, tried to catch up on sleep. But I kept waking up, checking the clock. 2:17, 4:30, 5:03. Those times from my field book. I got up at 6:30, made coffee, sat by the window, watched Main Street wake up. The delivery truck for the grocery store, the old men going to the diner for breakfast, the school bus, normal things. I tried to feel normal. At 9, Linda called. "Claire, the work you're doing is incredible. I drove by the cemetery yesterday. Those stones look amazing. You're working nights too? I saw your van there around 3 in the morning." My van. She saw my van. I asked her what day. "Tuesday. I was coming back from my sister's in Greencastle. Took the back way. Your van was parked in the usual spot. Lights were on inside." I told her I must have left them on. She said maybe, but they were bright, like the interior light was on. Not just parking lights. I hung up and checked my van. The interior light works on a timer. Turns off after 15 minutes if you don't close the door. So either I'd left the door open all night, or I'd been there Tuesday at 3 a.m. I would have had to be there to leave the light on. I checked the odometer. Since Sunday night, I'd added 127 miles. That was impossible. I'd only driven to the cemetery and back on Monday and Tuesday, 40 miles tops. But there it was, 127 miles. Thursday, I went back. I had to. Couldn't just stop working. The grant had deadlines, and honestly, I didn't know what else to do. I started on a new stone, Private Michael Donnelly. Worked slow, methodical. At lunch, I drove home, but instead of going inside, I just sat in my van and watched the cemetery entrance through my rearview mirror. Like I could catch myself coming or going. Nothing happened. At 2, I drove back, worked till 5, left the Donnelly stone half done, drove home, set my alarm for midnight. At midnight, I woke up before the alarm, just opened my eyes. Something felt wrong. The apartment was too cold. I got up, checked the thermostat. 68, same as always, but it felt colder. I looked out the window. Clear night. Stars. I got dressed without thinking about it, put on my work boots, drove to the cemetery. The interior light was on when I got there. I don't remember turning it on. I parked, got out, walked through the gap in the hedge. The Donnelly stone was finished, done in the dark by touch and memory. Perfect work. The consolidant was fresh, tacky. I touched it, still warm. I looked at my watch. 12:47. If I'd done it, I'd just finished. But I had no memory of starting. I looked at my hands. Stone dust, fresh scrapes on my knuckles. My jacket smelled of marble dust and the biocide solution. I reached into my pocket, found a piece of chalk, the kind I use to number stones. It was worn down to a nub, like I'd been using it for hours. I walked back to my van, got in, drove home. The odometer showed 11 miles, just there and back. I sat in the parked van for a long time, looking at my apartment building. The light was on in my kitchen. I didn't remember leaving it on. I went upstairs. My field book was open on the table. A new entry. Donnelly, complete. 12:47 a.m. My handwriting, but shakier than usual, like I'd written it in the dark. Friday, I called Linda, told her I was done. The project was complete. She was surprised, said they'd only budgeted for half the stones. I said I worked fast. She said she'd come out Monday to inspect, process the final payment. I said fine. I spent the rest of the day packing up my equipment. My tools were all clean, arranged in my toolbox in a way I don't usually do. I'm not messy, but I have a system. This was different. Everything was lined up by size, perfectly organized. I didn't remember cleaning them, but they were clean. Saturday, I slept, or tried to. Kept waking up at the same times. 2:17, 4:30, 5:03, 12:47, the times from my field book. My body would just jerk awake like it was used to being somewhere else at those times. I'd lie there, feeling the ache in my arms, the soreness in my back, like I'd been working. Sunday, I went to the cemetery one last time, walked every row. All 83 stones were restored, every one. The work was consistent, professional, exactly as I'd planned it in my initial survey. My plans, executed perfectly. I touched a few stones, fully cured now, ready for the anniversary. I took photos for the final report, packed up my tripod, turned to leave. That's when I saw the footprints. In the morning dew, leading from the hedge to the stones I'd worked on last. Small footprints, work boot size, my size. They came from the direction opposite how I usually entered, like someone had parked on the back road, come through the hedge, done the work, and left the same way. I followed them. They went to every stone that had been restored in the last week. Perfect path, logical order, the way I'd have done it. The prints were fresh, from this morning probably, from when I was asleep in my bed. I drove home, looked at my work boots. They were damp from the dew. I didn't remember walking in dew, but the evidence was there. I took them off, put them by the door. My feet ached. That specific ache from standing on cold ground for hours. I made coffee, even though it was 3 in the afternoon, sat at my kitchen table with my field book. Flipped through every page. Every entry was in my handwriting, Every time, every date, every detail. My pen, my shorthand, my system. But the memories weren't there. Just blank spaces where the work should be. I called Sarah, told her it was done, the project was finished. She asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know. She said she could drive out. I said no. I needed to be alone. She said that was the problem, maybe. Being alone too much. I said maybe. Monday, Linda came out, walked the cemetery with me. She was impressed. Said it was the best restoration she'd seen. Asked what techniques I'd used on the frost obelisk, said the repointing was textbook. I told her. She nodded, took notes. Asked about the Donnelly stone, said the inscription work was remarkable. I thanked her. She processed the payment. Told me the Historical Society would definitely hire me again. I said I'd be happy to work with them. That was last week. I've been trying to rest, trying to sleep normal hours, but I keep waking up at the same times. 2:17, 4:30, 5:03, 12:47. My body gets out of bed like it's going somewhere. I have to force myself to lie back down. The aches are still there, every morning. Stone dust under my nails, scrapes on my hands. My jacket smells of marble. I went back to the cemetery yesterday, just to look. Everything was perfect. The grant money came through. Linda sent me a nice email, said the board was thrilled. I should be thrilled too. I got paid for work I don't remember doing. Work my body remembers perfectly. Last night I set up the camera again, pointed it at my bed. I need to know. Need to see if I'm getting up, driving out there working in the dark. I watched the footage this morning. It's just me, sleeping. From midnight to 6, I don't move. Just lie there. But at 2:17, the camera shifts. Just a little, like something moved it. And there's a sound on the audio. I had to turn it up all the way to hear it. Stone on stone. A chisel tapping, the sound of someone working marble. I was in bed the whole time. I have proof. But my van's odometer shows another 47 miles. And there's a new receipt on my kitchen table. For marble dust, for consolidant, for brushes, dated yesterday, paid with my credit card. Signature matches mine perfectly. I don't remember buying anything. I think I'm going to take Sarah up on her offer. Have her come stay for a while. Maybe I need someone here at night. Someone to tell me where I am, where I've been, what I'm doing. But I'm scared, because what if she stays and she sees me? What if she watches me get up at 2:17, put on my work boots, drive away? What if she follows me and sees me in the cemetery working by moonlight, finishing stones I don't remember starting? What if she asks me what I'm doing and I can't answer because I'm asleep? Or worse, what if I'm awake and I still can't answer? I called the Historical Society today, told them I couldn't take any more projects. Not for a while. Linda asked if everything was okay. I said I just needed a break. She understood, said to call when I was ready. I won't be ready. The camera is set up again tonight. I'm going to stay awake. I have to. I have to see what's happening. But I'm so tired. My body feels like I've been working for weeks without rest. That deep, bone-tired ache that comes from leaning over stone, from brushing and chiseling and blending consolidant until it's perfect. I can feel it in my shoulders right now. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to make another pot of coffee. Try to stay up. Try to catch myself in the act. But I know I won't. I'll fall asleep. I'll wake up at 6, and there will be stone dust under my nails, and my odometer will show more miles, and my field book will have new entries. And I still won't remember any of it. The work is good, though. I have to give myself that. Whoever is doing it, me or someone else, they know what they're doing. The stones look beautiful. They'll last another 100 years now, maybe longer. I just wish I could remember making them beautiful. I wish I could remember the feel of the marble under my fingers, the way the consolidant flows into the worn letters, the satisfaction of seeing a name come back to life. But all I have is the finished stone, and the ache in my body, and the miles on my van, and the receipts, and the field book entries, and the camera that shows me sleeping while stone is being carved somewhere else. I think I'm going to stop fighting it. Whatever it is, whoever it is, the work is getting done. It's good work. Maybe that's enough. Maybe I don't need to remember. Maybe the work just needs to exist. But I keep thinking about those footprints in the dew, coming from the opposite direction. Like someone else was there. Someone who knows my work as well as I do. Maybe better. Someone who can finish what I start perfectly. Someone who uses my van, my tools, my credit card, my hands. My hands. I just looked at them. There's a new scrape on my index finger. Fresh. And under the nails, that fine white powder. I washed them before dinner. I know I did. I remember the soap, the water running clear. But here it is again. Stone dust. Marble dust, probably. From the cemetery. From the stones. It's 11 now. I should try to sleep. Or try to stay awake. I can't decide which is worse. Waking up tired or watching myself leave and not understanding why. The camera is recording. The field book is open on my nightstand, pen beside it. My boots are by the door, clean. For now. We'll see what they look like in the morning. I can hear the wind outside. It's the same wind that moves through the cemetery, that rattles the hawthorn hedge, that makes the grass sound like it's whispering. Sometimes I think I can hear words in it, names, the names on the stones, Drexler, Horner, Donnelly, Frost, all those boys who died before they ever got to be soldiers. Maybe they're the ones doing the work. Maybe they're using me to finish what someone started for them. Or maybe I'm just tired and lonely and losing my mind. The clock just clicked over to 11:30. Half an hour until midnight. Until the time when I might get up, might drive out there, might work in the dark. I don't know. I really don't. I guess I'll sit here a while longer, drink my coffee, watch the clock, try to remember what it feels like to choose to do something, to consciously decide to pick up a brush, to mix consolidant, to bring a name back from the edge of oblivion. I used to know that feeling. I used to love that feeling. Now I just have the work, without the memory of the love. That's the worst part, I think. Not the not knowing, not the fear. It's that the work is being taken from me, even as it's being done by me, or through me, or whatever this is. I don't get to remember the satisfaction. I just get the ache, the soreness, the stone dust, the miles. It's midnight now. I don't know what I feel. Tired, resigned, maybe a little curious. I wonder if I'll wake up in my bed or in my van. I wonder if I'll remember any of it. I wonder if the work will ever stop. The camera's light is blinking, recording. The field book is waiting. The boots are by the door. I guess we'll see what morning brings. My name is Claire, and I restore monuments for the dead. At least I think I do. The work is beautiful. I just wish I could remember being the one who made it that way. But the receipts are in my name, the mileage is on my van, and the clients are satisfied. I suppose that's all that really matters, except for the ache in my shoulders, and the dust under my nails, and the sound of chisel on stone that I hear sometimes when I'm supposed to be asleep. That sound, and the feeling that someone is finishing what I started, using my hands while I'm somewhere else. But the check's clear, the work is good, and I'm so very, very tired. I don't remember doing it, but my body aches like I did. My name is David, and I'm from Council Bluffs, Iowa. I guess I should say that I've always been a night person, not in that romantic way people talk about, like I'm some tortured artist or whatever. I just don't sleep good. Never have. Since I was a kid, my brain would wake up around 10 at night and stay that way until sunrise. So when I got the job at the Flying J Travel Plaza off I-80, it felt like a natural fit. That was 6 years ago. 6 years of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Tuesday through Saturday. You get into a rhythm. The world gets real small. It's just you, the hum of the refrigerators, the coffee machine that needs flushing every 4 hours, and the road outside. The road's always there, this constant hiss of tires on asphalt. You stop hearing it after a while, like how you stop hearing your own heartbeat. I live alone. Small apartment over on Pierce Street, 3rd floor of a house that got converted into units back in the 80s. Landlord's a guy named Frank who lives in Des Moines and forgets I exist, which is fine by me. Rent's cheap. Place smells like old carpet and the neighbor's cat. But it's mine. I got a bedroom I barely use, a kitchen where I make the same thing every day, 2 eggs, toast, coffee. Before I leave for work at 9:30, I take the same route, down Pierce to Broadway, left on 23rd, out to the highway. Takes 18 minutes if I hit the lights right. I know because I've timed it. You get precise about these things when your days are nights. The Flying J is one of those places that's been there forever. Opened in 1974, and I swear some of the candy bars in aisle 3 are original stock. It's a rectangle of a building. Cinder block walls painted this yellow that's supposed to be cheerful but just looks tired. Fluorescent lights that buzz. One of them, over by the diesel register, flickers in this specific pattern. Off for 3 seconds, on for 7. I used to count it. Now it's just background noise, like the road. I work with a guy named Ray during shift change. He's the evening guy, 3 to 10. Old Vietnam vet, talks real slow, always smells like menthol cigarettes even though he quit 20 years ago. He tells the same stories, about the time a semi full of cattle tipped over right there at the exit ramp, about the tornado in '93 that took the sign but left the building, about the woman who gave birth in the women's restroom in 2001. I've heard them all 100 times. I could recite them. Sometimes, when he's in the middle of one, I'll mouth the words along with him just to see if he notices. He never does. The regulars are clockwork. There's Jerry, a trucker who hauls pork out of Sioux City, comes through every Wednesday around 2 a.m., buys the same thing, 2 packs of Marlboro Reds, a large coffee, black, and a honey bun. Always pays cash. Always says, "Keep the change, kid," even though I'm 37. Then there's the couple, Linda and Steve, who drive a camper and stop in every Friday night on their way to see their grandkids in Denver. They get gas, use the bathroom, buy a bag of Doritos. Steve always complains about the price of diesel. Linda always asks if we have any fresh coffee, even though she can see me brewing a new pot. I tell her it'll be 5 minutes. She says she'll wait. She always waits. Then there's the quiet ones, the drifters, the insomniacs, the people who wander in at 4 a.m. with that look, like they're not sure how they got there. I don't mind them. They don't talk much. They just want a cup of coffee and a place to sit for a while. We got a booth by the window, vinyl seats cracked and taped. They sit there, staring at the trucks lined up in the lot, the drivers sleeping in their cabs. Sometimes they fall asleep. I let them. It's not like we're busy. My routine is solid. At 10, Ray leaves. I lock the door behind him, switch the sign to open 24 hours. I count the register. Always $250 in 20s, 10s, 5s, 1s. I check the safe. I make a pot of coffee. I wipe down the counters. I face the cigarettes. I check the bathrooms. Men's is usually fine. Women's sometimes has paper towels on the floor. I pick them up. I restock the toilet paper. I go back behind the counter and I wait. The first rush is midnight. Truckers getting a late start. Then it dies down until about 3. That's the dead zone. Nothing happens between 3 and 4. That's when I do my crossword. I get the paper from the rack, the Omaha World Herald. I work the puzzle in pen, which Ray says is cocky, but I don't like pencils. The scratch of the lead. I like the smooth glide of a Pilot G2. I go through maybe 2 pens a month. At 4:30, the early birds start. Construction guys, local farmers. They want coffee, maybe a breakfast sandwich if the microwave's working. Then it's quiet again until 6, when my relief, Marcus, comes in. Marcus is 22, just out of community college, wants to be a graphic designer. He always shows up 5 minutes late, always has some excuse. Car trouble. Alarm didn't go off. His cat died. Again, I don't care. I'm ready to go home. That's my life. Or it was. Until the inventory started being wrong. It was a Tuesday. I remember because that's when the Pepsi delivery comes. I was checking in the order, scanning the bottles. I counted 12 cases of Mountain Dew. The invoice said 12, but when I scanned the shelf tag, the system said we should have 14. I figured Ray sold a couple before I got there, forgot to log it. Happens. He's getting old. So I adjusted the count and moved on. Next day, the cigarette count was off. We were short 2 packs of Camel Blues. I checked the sales log. Nothing. I checked the camera footage. Ray didn't sell any. I didn't sell any. But they were gone. I wrote it off as shrinkage. Shoplifting. It happens. We got a blind spot by the motor oil rack. Someone could have grabbed them. But then it was the honey buns. We get them in boxes of 8. I opened a fresh box Thursday night, put them in the display. Friday morning, after Linda and Steve left, I checked. There were 3 left. They'd bought 1 bag of Doritos, no honey buns, but the box was empty. 5 honey buns, gone. No wrappers in the trash, nothing on the cameras. I asked Marcus if he'd sold any. He looked at me like I was crazy. I just got here, man. I started paying closer attention. Little things. A coffee mug I'd left on the counter would be in the sink when I came back from the bathroom. The mop bucket, which I always leave by the slop sink, would be by the door. I'd find the radio tuned to a station I don't listen to. Country. I hate country. I always leave it on the classic rock station. Ray knows that. Marcus knows that. But there it was, twanging away at 3 a.m. I started to think I was forgetting things. Sleep deprivation, maybe. Even though I sleep fine during the day. 8 hours, usually. Blackout curtains, white noise machine. But maybe it's catching up. So I started writing things down. A log. 10:15 p.m. Mop bucket by slop sink. 10:47 p.m. Coffee mug on counter, 3rd from left. I'd take a picture with my phone, time-stamped, but the pictures would be wrong. I'd take a photo of the mop bucket by the slop sink. An hour later, I'd check the photo. The bucket would be by the door. In the photo. The same photo I'd just taken. I'd think I was losing my mind. I'd take another photo. The bucket would be back by the sink, but the first photo, the one on my phone, would still show it by the door. It was like the past was changing. Or my memory was, or both. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? Ray would just grunt and say I'm working too hard. Marcus would make a joke about ghosts. Tomash, my ex, we split 2 years ago, would say I need to see a doctor. So I kept it to myself. I just watched closer. The customers started being weird too. Not all of them, just some. This one guy came in on a Monday. I'd never seen him before. He bought a pack of gum. As I was ringing him up, he said, "You got a sister named Rachel?" I froze. I do have a sister named Rachel, but she lives in Portland. We don't talk much. How would this guy know that? "Who are you?" I asked. He just smiled. "She says hi." Then he left. I ran to the window, watched him get into a blue pickup. No license plate. He pulled onto the highway and was gone. I called Rachel. She didn't answer. I left a message. She called back the next day, said she never sent anyone. Thought it was a joke. I didn't press it. Then there was the woman. Came in Thursday, around 3 a.m. She looked normal. Jeans, t-shirt, hair in a ponytail. She bought a bottle of water. As she was paying, she said, "The left burner on your stove is out, the pilot light." I just stared at her. "You'll want to fix that," she said, "before you try to make eggs tomorrow." I don't talk about my eggs. I never have. It's just my routine. How would she know about the left burner? I'd been meaning to call Frank about it for a week. It was just one of those things you put off. I went home that morning and checked. The pilot was out. I hadn't told anyone. Not Ray, not Marcus, not Frank. So how did she know? I started asking the regulars if they'd seen her. Described her. Nobody had. Jerry the trucker just shook his head. "Sounds like a ghost, kid." He meant it as a joke. I started watching the security footage. We got 4 cameras, one over each register, one over the main door, one in the back hall by the bathrooms. I'd scroll through on my laptop during the slow hours. I started noticing gaps. Not in the recording. The timestamps would be continuous. But there'd be these moments where people would just appear, not walk in, just be there, like they'd been edited in. I caught it once with Jerry. The footage would show the store empty at 2:13 a.m. Then at 2:14 he'd be standing at the register. No motion blur, no door opening, just there. I'd check the door camera. Same thing. Empty, then suddenly, Jerry. I thought the system was glitching. I asked Marcus if he'd noticed anything weird with the playback. He said he never watches it. Why would I? Nothing ever happens. But things were happening. I started logging the gaps. I'd note the time, the customer, the duration. There was a pattern. They always happened between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m. Always when I was in the bathroom or in the back checking inventory or restocking the cooler. Never when I was at the register. It was like something was happening in the store when I wasn't looking, or someone. Then the receipts started printing wrong. Not the totals, the items. I'd ring up Jerry for his Marlboros and coffee, and the receipt would list a pack of Camels and a donut. I'd show it to Jerry. He'd laugh. "Your machine's got a sense of humor, kid." But the inventory would match the receipt, not what I knew I'd sold. The Marlboros would still be in the rack. The Camels would be gone. Even though Jerry had walked out with Marlboros. I saw him. I started keeping my own paper log, writing down every transaction by hand, but the next day the handwriting would be different. Not dramatically, just off. My G's would loop the wrong way. My T's would be crossed on the left instead of the right. Little things. Things only you notice about your own writing. I thought about quitting. But what would I do? It's not like there are a lot of jobs for a guy whose only skill is staying awake. And the money's decent. Benefits. I got dental, so I stayed. I just got more careful. I started setting traps. Not real traps. Just tests. I'd place a penny heads up on the counter. I'd take a picture. I'd check it every hour. Sometimes it'd be tails. The picture would show tails. I'd flip it back. The next hour, heads again. But the photo I took would show tails. It was like the photo and reality were fighting. I put a piece of tape on the floor by the motor oil rack, where the blind spot is. The next morning, the tape was gone. But the camera footage showed it still there. I could see it, a little silver line on the tile. But when I looked at the floor, nothing. I touched the spot. The tile was cold. Colder than the rest of the floor, like something had been standing there. I started wearing a watch, a cheap digital one. I wanted to see if time was the problem. I'd sync it with my phone, then I'd check it every hour. It would drift. Not much, A minute, 2 minutes, but always forward, always gaining time. I'd reset it. It would do it again. I bought a second watch. Same thing. I started to think it wasn't the watches. It was the store. The customers started finishing my sentences. Linda and Steve came in that Friday. Steve started his diesel complaint. "Can you believe it? $4.29 a gallon?" I finished, without thinking. He stopped, looked at me weird. "Yeah, how'd you know?" I didn't. I just knew. Like I'd heard it before. I laughed it off. Lucky guess. But it kept happening. Jerry came in Wednesday. I had his Marlboros and coffee already on the counter before he asked. He didn't even question it, just said, "Thanks, kid," and paid. I started to think I was having déjà vu, but it was too specific, too consistent. I could predict the next song on the radio. I knew when the flickering light would go out completely. I knew that at 3:47 a.m., the toilet in the men's room would run for exactly 12 seconds. I hadn't timed it. I just knew. Then the phone calls started. The store phone, behind the counter. It would ring at 2:22 a.m. Every night. I'd answer. There'd be static. Then a voice. My voice. Saying, "Check the log." I'd hang up. Check the log. Nothing. Then I'd notice something. A pack of cigarettes missing. A candy bar out of place. The mop bucket moved. I stopped answering. It would ring for exactly 1 minute, then stop. At 2:23 a.m. every night. I told Frank about the phone. He said there was no phone line to the store. "It's all digital now," he said. "The phone's just for show. It's not even connected." I showed him the phone. It was an old rotary from the 70s. He'd never seen it before. "That wasn't there when I owned the place," he said. "Must be something Ray put in." Ray said he'd never seen it either. "I thought it was yours." I unplugged it, or tried to. There was no cord. It was just there, sitting on the shelf under the register. I could pick it up, dial it. It would ring. But it wasn't connected to anything. I put it in the dumpster out back. The next night, it was back on the shelf. I didn't question it. I just let it sit there. At 2:22 a.m., it would ring. I'd let it. I'd hear my voice. "Check the log." I'd check. Something would be wrong. I started to think the store was alive. Not in a sentient way. More like a recording, a loop. And I was part of it. But I was also outside of it. I could see the seams. Marcus noticed something. "You ever feel like you've done this before?" he asked one morning as I was leaving. "All the time," I said. "Not just the job. I mean, this exact moment. You, me, the coffee, the light flickering. It's like a rerun." I asked him when he started feeling that way. He thought about it. "A few weeks ago, right around when you started acting weird." I didn't know I was acting weird, but I guess I was. I stopped sleeping. I'd go home, lie in bed, and just think about the store, about the phone, about the log. I'd get up and check my paper log. The handwriting would be different. I'd rewrite it. The next day, it would be different again. I started dreaming about the store. But in the dreams, I wasn't alone. There was someone else. A shape. It would stand by the motor oil rack in the blind spot. I'd try to look at it, but my eyes would slide away. Like trying to look at your own nose. You know it's there, but you can't focus. I started staying late. After Marcus came in, I'd sit in my car in the lot, watch the store. Nothing happened. It just sat there, fluorescent lights buzzing, flickering light still flickering, but I felt like if I left, something would. I don't know. Break. Tomasz, my ex, called me, out of the blue. Heard from a mutual friend I wasn't doing well. He asked if I needed help. I almost told him. But what would I say? I think the convenience store I work at is stuck in a time loop, and there's a phone that calls me from nowhere, and my handwriting is changing, and I think there's something living in the blind spot by the motor oil. He'd hang up. I said I was fine. Just tired. He said I should take a vacation. I said maybe. I took a day off, called in sick. Marcus covered. I stayed home, watched TV, tried to forget the store, but at 2:22 a.m., my cell phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Static. Then my voice. Check the log. I didn't have the log. It was at the store. I drove there. Marcus was surprised to see me. You okay, man? Fine, I said. Just forgot something. I checked the log. It was blank. All the pages were blank. I flipped through. Nothing. I looked at the phone on the shelf. It was ringing. I answered. My voice said, "You can't leave." I hung up, drove home. The next morning, Marcus called me. Hey, what was up with that log? It was just a bunch of gibberish. What do you mean? I mean, it was just random letters, like someone mashed the keyboard. You didn't see it? I hadn't seen it, but I believed him. I went back that night. The log was full, my handwriting, perfectly normal entries, times, dates, transactions, but the times were wrong. They'd say 2 o'clock a.m., 2:01 a.m., 2:02 a.m., but the transaction would be customer Jerry, Marlboro Reds, coffee, honey bun. Jerry doesn't come in at 2. Jerry comes in at 2:13, always 2:13, but the log said 2. I checked the security footage. At 2:00 a.m., Jerry was there, plain as day, but I knew he wasn't. I'd been at the register. I'd looked at the clock. It was 2 o'clock. He wasn't there. Then at 2:13, he was. I started to think there were 2 Jerrys, or 2 stores, or 2 me's. I started watching the cameras more. I'd have the feed up on my laptop behind the counter. I'd watch myself. I'd see myself go to the bathroom. Then I'd see myself still at the register. 2 of me. One in the bathroom, one selling cigarettes to a customer who wasn't there. I'd look up from the laptop. I'd be at the register. No one else. I'd look back at the screen. There I'd be in the bathroom. Then the screen would flicker, and it would just be me at the register. The bathroom camera would show an empty room. I started to think the cameras were lying. Or I was. Marcus called in sick one day. Threw off the whole schedule. Frank asked if I could cover. I said sure. I worked a double. 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. the next day. 16 hours. I thought maybe if I stayed through the day shift, I'd see something. Some difference. Some clue. The day shift is a different world. Families. Kids. Sunlight streaming through the windows. The flickering fluorescent doesn't matter as much. The road noise is different. More cars, fewer trucks. I watched the customers. They seemed normal. They didn't repeat themselves. They didn't know what they were going to buy before they bought it. They didn't finish my sentences. But at 2:22 p.m., the phone rang. I answered without thinking. Static. My voice. Check the log. I checked. The pages were blank. I looked at the phone. No cord. I looked at the clock. 2:22 p.m. I'd been there 16 hours, but my time card would only show 8. I knew it. When Frank came in to close, I asked him about the time cards. He said the system was automatic, digital. I asked to see mine. He pulled it up on the office computer. It showed I'd clocked in at 10 p.m., clocked out at 6 a.m. Every day. Never a minute late, never a minute early. Perfect attendance. But I worked today, I said. The whole day. You clocked out at 6, he said. Just like always. I looked at the computer screen. There I was. 10 p.m., 6 a.m., 8 hours. The dates were right. The times were right. but I knew they were wrong. I could feel it. The 16 hours I'd just worked felt longer. They felt like they'd been folded into 8, like time had been compressed. I went home, slept for 14 hours, woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. The next night, I decided to film myself. I set up my phone on a little tripod behind the counter, pointed it at me, hit record. I worked my shift. At 6 a.m., I stopped the recording. I went home. I watched it. The video was 8 hours long, but when I played it back, it was only 4. The timeline said 8 hours, but the scrub bar moved twice as fast. I could see myself moving in fast forward, but not comically fast. Just slightly accelerated. I'd look at the clock. It would jump ahead 2 minutes, then 3, then 5. But always in increments that made sense. 10:02, 10:02, 10:05, 10:09. Like time was stuttering. I watched the whole thing. At 2:22 a.m. the phone rang. In the video, I answered, but there was no sound, just static. Then my lips moved. I'd said something, but the audio was gone. I checked the waveform, flat line, for exactly 1 minute. Then it came back. I watched the part where Jerry came in. In the video, he appeared at 2:00 a.m., not 2:13. The timestamp said 2:00. I remembered 2:13, but the video said 2:00. And in the video, I had his cigarettes and coffee ready. I watched myself hand them to him before he asked. He didn't seem surprised. He just took them, paid, left. I watched the part where I went to the bathroom. In the video, I never left the register. I was always there. But I could see in the reflection of the window behind me a shape moving down the hall toward the bathrooms. A second me. And when that shape passed the back hall camera, I could see myself, walking. But the register camera still showed me at the counter. 2 me's. 1 video. I stopped watching. I deleted the file. But it was still there, in my recently deleted folder. I deleted it again. It came back. I emptied the folder. It was still there. I restarted my phone. It was still there. I factory reset the phone. When it booted back up, the video was on the home screen. 8 hours long, 4 hours of footage, 2 me's. I went to work that night. Marcus was back. He looked at me weird. "You okay, man? You look like hell." "I'm fine," I said. "You sure? You've been here every time I come in, even on your days off. I see your car in the lot." I hadn't been. I'd been home, sleeping, or trying to. "Must be someone else," I said. "Same car. Blue Civic, license plate DMK 447. "That's my plate." I didn't know what to say, so I just started my shift. The phone rang at 2:22 a.m. I didn't answer. It rang for a minute, stopped. I checked the log. It was blank. I wrote in it, 2:22 a.m., phone rang, did not answer. I took a picture. The picture showed the page, blank. At 2:13 a.m., Jerry came in. I didn't have his cigarettes ready. I waited for him to ask. He did. I rang him up. He said, "Keep the change, kid." He left. I felt like I'd passed a test. At 3:00 a.m., I went to the bathroom. I locked the register. I walked down the hall. I passed the back hall camera. I waved at it. I went in the bathroom. I came out. I walked back. I unlocked the register. I sat down. I felt normal. I checked the security footage. There I was, at the register the whole time. Never left. The bathroom camera showed an empty room all night. The back hall camera showed nothing. I was at the register, selling cigarettes to Jerry at 2:00 a.m., not 2:13. At 2:13, I was in the bathroom, but I wasn't. I was at the register. I stopped checking the footage. It was lying. Or I was. It didn't matter which. The next day, I called Tomash. I hadn't talked to him in months. He answered. He sounded tired. "David, everything okay?" I told him everything. The phone, the log, the footage, the two me's. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "You need to quit that job." "I can't," I said. "It's not about the job, it's about me. I'm not right." "Then see someone, a doctor, a therapist." "I don't think they can help." "Why not?" "Because it's not in my head, it's in the store." "And the store is in me." He didn't understand. I didn't expect him to. I went to work that night. The phone rang at 2:22 a.m. I answered. My voice said, "You're ready." "Ready for what?" I asked. "To see." The line went dead. I hung up. I checked the log. It was full, but not with my handwriting. With block letters, all caps, like a typewriter. It said, 2:22 a.m., subject accepts. I closed the log. I didn't write in it again. At 3:00 a.m., I went to the bathroom. I walked down the hall. I passed the camera. I went in. I locked the door. I looked in the mirror. My reflection looked back. But behind my reflection, in the mirror's reflection, I could see the store, the register, and there I was, standing behind it, selling cigarettes to Jerry, who wasn't there. I turned around. The bathroom was empty. I looked back at the mirror. The store was still there, in the glass. I could see the flickering light. I could see the phone on the shelf. I could see myself at the register, looking at something. I leaned closer. In the mirror store, I was looking at a phone. A cell phone. My cell phone. I was watching a video. I pulled out my phone. I opened the video. There I was, in the bathroom, looking in the mirror. Live. I was watching myself watch myself. The video me looked at his phone. I looked at my phone. The video me looked up, into the mirror. I looked up, into the mirror. Our eyes met. But they weren't my eyes. They were older, tired. They'd seen more than I'd seen. The video me spoke. "You're not supposed to be here." I spoke. "Where am I supposed to be?" "At the register." I left the bathroom. I walked down the hall. I passed the camera. I didn't look at it. I sat at the register. I looked at the phone on the shelf. It rang. I answered. My voice said, "Good." I hung up. I didn't check the log. I didn't check the footage. I just worked. I sold cigarettes to Jerry at 2:00 a.m. I sold coffee to Linda and Steve at 4:30. I sold a honey bun to a drifter at 5:15. I counted the register. It was always right. The inventory was always right. The log was always blank. The phone only rang once at 2:22 a.m. I always answered. I always heard my voice. It always said, "Good." Marcus quit, got a job in graphic design. I covered his shifts. I worked 7 days a week. Frank didn't question it. He just adjusted the schedule. Ray retired. I covered his shifts too. I worked 3 to 10, then 10 to 6. 16 hours. My time card always showed 8. My paycheck was always right. I stopped going home. I slept in the booth. I'd wake up and the store would be clean. The coffee would be made. The mop bucket would be by the slop sink. I'd check the log. Blank. I'd check the footage. It would show me working perfect. Tomash called again. "You haven't been home in a week. Frank said you're living there." "I'm fine," I said. "You're not fine. You're scaring me." "Don't be scared. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." I hung up. I blocked his number. I blocked everyone. I stopped answering my cell. I stopped charging it. It didn't matter. The store phone was the only one that called me now. The truckers stopped coming. Then the regulars. Then the drifters. The store was empty. But the register still had sales. The log still filled itself in block letters. The footage showed customers, people I'd never seen. They'd buy things. The inventory would deplete. The money would add up. But the store was empty. I checked the lot. No trucks, no cars, just mine. The blue Civic, DMK 447. It was the only one there. But the security footage showed a full lot. Trucks lined up, drivers sleeping, people coming and going. I watched the footage. I watched myself at the register, selling to people who weren't there. I watched myself go to the bathroom while I sat at the register. I watched myself mop the floor while I sat in the booth. I watched myself everywhere, all at once. The phone rang at 2:22 a.m. I answered. My voice said, "You're ready to see." "See what?" I asked. "The schedule." The line went dead. I checked the log. It wasn't a log anymore. It was a calendar. Dates, times, names, Jerry, Linda, Steve, the drifters, the woman who knew about my stove. The man who asked about Rachel, my name, tomorrow's date, 2:22 a.m. Subject accepts. I flipped back. Yesterday's date, 2:22 a.m. Subject accepts. Every day, back 6 years. Every day, the same entry. Every day, me. Accepting. I flipped forward. Tomorrow, 2:22 a.m. Subject accepts. The day after, same. A week, same. A month, same. A year, same. 10 years, same. The phone rang. I answered. My voice said, "You see?" "I see," I said. "Good." I hung up. I sat at the register. I waited. The store was empty. The footage was full. The log was full. The schedule was full. I was full. Of the store, of the time, of the me that wasn't me. I don't go home anymore. There's no point. The apartment is empty. Frank rented it to someone else. A guy named Marcus, oddly enough. He pays rent on time. He never misses a day. He works nights at a convenience store. I still work the register. The phone rings. I answer. I say, "Good." I hang up. I check the log. It's blank. I check the footage. It's just me. I check the schedule. It's full. I don't question it. I don't doubt it. I just accept it. Because that's what the schedule says. Subject accepts. Sometimes, when the flickering light goes out, I see the shape. By the motor oil rack. It's not a person. It's just a lack. A space where something should be. I don't look at it directly. I know better now. I just ring up the customers. The ones on the footage, the ones in the log, the ones in the schedule. I take their money. I give them change. I say, "Have a good night." They don't answer. They never answer. But the register opens. The money appears. The inventory depletes. The schedule is satisfied. Tomasz came by last week. He stood outside, pounding on the glass. I saw him on the camera. He was shouting. I could read his lips. "David, come out!" I looked at the register. There was a button. "Lock door." I pressed it. The door locked. Tomasz pulled on it. It didn't budge. He called the police. They came. They knocked. I didn't answer. They had a key. It didn't work. The door was sealed. They looked through the window. They saw me at the register alone. They asked if I was okay. I gave them a thumbs up. They left. Tomasz left. The schedule remained. The phone rings at 2:22 a.m. I answer. My voice says, "You're doing well?" "Thank you," I say. "Tomorrow, we add a new customer." "Who?" "You'll see." I hang up. I check the log. It's blank. I check the footage. There's a new person. A woman. She buys a pack of Camels. I don't recognize her, but I will. Tomorrow, when she comes in. She'll be real then. For now, she's just footage. just schedule, just me. I don't know how long it's been. The calendar in the office stopped at 2024. The computer says it's 2025. My phone is dead. The store phone only calls itself. The outside world is just the hiss of tires on asphalt. But there are no trucks. There are no cars. Just the sound. I used to think the sound was the road. Now I think it's the store. Breathing. The fluorescent hum is its heartbeat. The flickering light is its eye, opening and closing. The phone is its voice. The log is its memory. And I am its function. I am the operator, the attendant, the subject. The schedule says I accept. So I do. I accept that the inventory is always right, even when it's wrong, so I accept that the footage shows what it shows, even when it's not what I see. I accept that the phone rings and I answer, and I am the voice on the other end. I accept that I am here, and also there, and also in the bathroom, and also in the parking lot, and also in the footage, and also in the log, and also in the schedule. I accept that I am all these things at once, and also none of them. The phone rings. I answer. My voice says, "It's time." "For what?" I ask. "To clock out." I hang up. I look at the time card. It's blank. I clock out. The register opens. I put the money in the bag. I walk to the safe. I deposit it. I walk back. I sit in the booth. I wait. The door opens. It's me. Another me. The me from the footage. He walks in. He stands at the register. He looks at me. I look at him. He says, "You're early." I say, "I'm right on time." He nods. He walks to the back hall. He disappears into the bathroom. I hear the lock click. I hear the toilet flush. I hear the door unlock. He walks back. He sits at the register. He looks at the phone. It rings. He answers. He says, "Good." He hangs up. He looks at me. "You can go now." I stand up. I walk to the door. It's locked. I look back. He's gone. The register is empty. The footage shows me leaving. The log shows 6:00 a.m., subject departs. The schedule shows tomorrow's date, 2:22 a.m. Subject accepts. I accept. I always accept. Because what else is there? The store is all there is. The road, the hiss, the hum, the flicker, the phone, the log, the footage, the schedule. It's all one thing, and I am it. And it is me, and we are here, together, forever. Or at least until the schedule says otherwise. The phone rings. I answer. My voice says, "Welcome back." I say, "I never left." The voice says, "Exactly." My name is Duncan, and I'm from Portree, Isle of Skye. Suppose I should start by saying I didn't want to go back. Not really. When Margaret passed last spring, April it was, the lilacs just starting to show in that little patch of garden she kept outside our kitchen window. When she passed, she left specific instructions. She wanted her ashes scattered over the old cemetery grounds where I'd worked as a young man. 30 years ago now. Said it was the most peaceful place she'd ever been, though she'd only visited the once, when we were courting. I told her then it wasn't a proper place for a picnic, but she'd insisted, brought a blanket and sandwiches wrapped in brown paper. Sat right there on the hill above the north wall, looking out over the sea loch. I remember the wind kept trying to steal her hairpins. After the funeral, after the paperwork and the phone calls and all the things that fill up the days when someone dies, I put the urn on the mantel, just above the fireplace, next to that photograph of us at Dunvegan Castle. We looked happy. I suppose we were. The urn was smaller than I expected, brass, with a pattern of leaves stamped around the middle. Margaret always did love autumn leaves. I kept meaning to make the trip out to the cemetery, but something always came up. The car needed new tires. My sister called from Inverness, needed help with her youngest boy, trouble at school, the kind of trouble boys get into when they think no one's watching. Then there was the rain. October on Skye, it rains more days than not. You get used to it, but it makes the roads treacherous, especially out toward the old places. I live in a small house on the edge of Portree. 2 bedrooms, though one's just for storage now. I kept Margaret's clothes in the wardrobe for 6 months after she died. Couldn't bring myself to box them up. My sister finally did it for me when she came to visit in September. Said it wasn't healthy seeing them every morning. She's probably right. She usually is about those things. The house is one of those whitewashed cottages you see all over the island, with a slate roof that needs patching every other year. I've got a small kitchen, a sitting room that faces east, gets good light in the morning, which Margaret always appreciated. She'd sit in her chair by the window, drinking tea from that blue mug with the chip in the handle, watching the fishing boats come into the harbor. These days, I work at the co-op in town, stocking shelves, mostly. Sometimes they have me on the till if Jeannie's off sick. It's not the work I ever imagined doing, but after I left the cemetery job, after the incident with the previous groundskeeper, though nobody called it an incident, not really, after that, I drifted. Worked on fishing boats for a while, but my hands aren't steady enough for the nets. Did some construction over in Broadford. But the co-op's steady. Pays enough for the mortgage and the electricity. I go in at 8, leave at 4:30. Same route every day. Past the harbor, up the hill, past the school where the kids all shout at recess. You fall into a rhythm. You stop noticing things after a while. My routine is simple. Alarm goes off at 6:30. I lie in bed for 10 minutes, listening to the wind. Always wind on Skye. Sometimes it's gentle, just brushing against the window frames. Other times it howls like it's trying to get in. I get up, put on the kettle. Tea, 2 sugars, the way Margaret taught me. I never drank tea before I met her. Was a coffee man. She said tea was better for the nerves. I think she was right about that too. I eat toast, plain, no butter, and read the bits of the newspaper that come through the letterbox. Usually it's yesterday's news, but I don't mind. Time moves slower here. You don't need to know everything right away. After work, I come home, make dinner. Something simple. Pasta maybe, or a baked potato. Margaret was the cook in our house. She had a way with spices I never learned. I can manage the basics, but everything tastes a bit bland now. I eat in front of the television, though I rarely pay attention to what's on. It's just noise. Company, I guess. Then I wash up, maybe read a chapter of whatever book I've got from the mobile library that comes every other Tuesday. Usually something about history. Margaret liked romance novels, the ones with the covers of women in long dresses staring out at the sea. I tried reading one after she died just to see what she saw in them. Couldn't get past the first page. Too much drama. Too many people saying things they don't mean. On Saturdays, I do the washing. Strip the bed, though it's just my sheets now. Take down the curtains every 3rd week, wash those too. Dust the mantel. I keep Margaret's urn there, but I move it when I dust. Feels wrong to dust around it like I'm ignoring her. I talk to her sometimes while I clean. Nothing important. Just comments about the weather or the price of bread at the co-op. Silly things. But it feels natural. The house is quiet otherwise. Too quiet. I never noticed how much noise another person makes until they're not there anymore. The creak of a chair when they shift their weight. The way they hum while they brush their teeth. Little sounds that fill up the silence. The cemetery is about 15 miles from Portree, out on the western coast. You take the A87 north, then turn off onto a single-track road that isn't marked on most maps. It winds through the hills, past a few houses that have been empty since the crofting days. You have to watch for sheep. They wander onto the road like they own it, which I suppose they do, in a way. The turnoff is easy to miss if you don't know it's there. Just a gap in the dry stone wall, a track that's more mud than gravel. You bump along for another mile, the bracken scraping against the car doors, and then you see it. The cemetery wall, what's left of it. Granite stones, moss-covered, partly collapsed on the north side. The iron gate hangs crooked on its hinges, rusted the color of old blood. I hadn't been out there since 1994, my last day of work. I remember it was October then, too. The light had that particular quality it gets in autumn, thin and golden, like the sun's given up on being warm and is just going through the motions. I'd packed up my tools, my spade and my trowel and the small pair of shears I used for trimming the grass around the headstones, left them in the shed behind the church. The church itself had been deconsecrated years before, after the congregation dwindled to nothing. Just a stone building with a bell tower that hadn't rung in decades. The roof had holes in it. You could see the sky through the slates, but the cemetery was still maintained back then, just barely. I'd go out twice a week, cut the grass, clear the bracken, straighten any stones that had tipped. It was peaceful work. I liked being alone out there, with just the wind and the gulls for company. Margaret came to visit me once, like I said. She brought those sandwiches, cheese and pickle, I think, and a thermos of tea. We sat on the hill and she asked me about the names on the stones, who they were, how long they'd been there. Most of them were from the 1800s, crofters and their families. A lot of children. You see that on old stones. Whole families of children, dead within weeks of each other. Fever, probably, or famine. The stones tell stories if you know how to read them. Margaret liked that idea. She said it made them less lonely, knowing someone remembered. She was like that. She saw stories everywhere. After she died, after the urn sat on the mantel for those months, I wrote to the council. Had to get permission to scatter ashes on private land, even abandoned land. They wrote back after 3 weeks, said it was fine, just to stay away from the church foundation. Liability issues. I wrote again, asked if anyone was still maintaining the grounds. They said no, the cemetery had been officially abandoned in 1998, 4 years after I left. Said nature had taken it back, which is the polite way of saying it's a mess out there. I thanked them, folded the letter, put it in the drawer with the car insurance and the boiler warranty. Didn't think much more about it until the end of October, when the leaves started to turn proper yellow and the wind picked up. I chose a Tuesday, my day off. The forecast said rain in the afternoon, but clear morning. I got up at 6:30, same as always. Made tea, 2 sugars, packed a small bag, just the urn, a trowel in case the ground was too hard, a bottle of water. I wore my old boots, the ones I'd kept from my groundskeeping days. They're leather, heavy-soled, with a particular tread pattern I'd recognize anywhere. Deep grooves, good for mud. I'd had them resoled 3 times over the years. They're comfortable, broken in just right. Margaret always said they made me look like a proper workman, whatever that means. The drive out was uneventful. I saw 3 cars on the A87, all going the other way. Tourists, probably, heading for the ferry pools or the old man of store. They drive too fast on those roads, not used to the curves. I kept to 40, let the landscape roll past. The hills were brown already, the heather gone gray. There's a particular smell to sky in autumn, like wet wool and wood smoke. It gets into your clothes. I had the window cracked just an inch, and the air was sharp, cold enough to make my eyes water. I found the turnoff without trouble, even after all those years. The gap in the wall was still there, though the bracken had grown up thicker. I had to ease the car through slowly, listening to the branches scrape against the paint. I should have cared, I suppose, but the car's 15 years old already. A few more scratches won't matter. The track was worse than I remembered, more holes than road. I bumped along, the urn in its box rattling gently on the passenger seat. I'd wrapped it in a tea towel to keep it steady, but it still shifted with every jolt. When I got to the cemetery, I parked just outside the gate, same as I always did. The gate itself was more rust than iron now, hanging at a worse angle. I doubted it would close proper if I tried. I sat in the car for a moment, engine running, just looking. The fog was rolling in from the sea, thick and white, swallowing the tops of the headstones. You could only see the first few rows clearly, then everything faded into gray. The trees, what was left of them, were bare, just skeletal branches reaching up like they were trying to grab the sky. I remember thinking it looked exactly like it should. Peaceful in a desolate sort of way. Margaret would have liked it. She always preferred quiet places. I turned off the engine and the silence hit me. That's the thing about Skye. You forget how quiet it can be when you're in town, with the cars and the gulls and the kids shouting. Out there, it's just the wind. And even the wind sounds different, like it's got more space to breathe. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, listening. There was a sheep somewhere in the distance, that high-pitched bleating they do when they're separated from the flock. And the sea, though you couldn't see it, you could hear it, that low, constant rush against the rocks below the cliff. But underneath it all, there was nothing. Just stillness. I got out of the car, put on my jacket. The air was damp. That fine mist that isn't quite rain but soaks you through just the same. I could smell the wet granite of the headstones, even from where I stood. It's a clean smell, cold and ancient. I took the urn from its box, held it under my arm. It's heavier than you'd think, Ash. I'd only carried it from the mantel to the kitchen a few times, never outside. It felt solid, real. I walked to the gate, pushed it open. It groaned, metal on stone, but swung enough for me to slip through. The path inside was gone, not even a trace of it. When I worked there, I'd laid down gravel, raked it smooth every week. Now it was just grass and moss, thick and spongy underfoot. I stepped carefully, my boots sinking into the wet earth. The first headstone I came to was one I remembered. MacLeod. Same as my name, but no relation. Donald MacLeod, died 1887, aged 34. His wife, Janet, beside him, died 1902. I used to clean their stone every week, brush the moss from the inscription. Now it was half covered, the lettering worn away by wind and rain. You could barely make out the dates. I ran my finger over the indent, felt the cold stone. It was like touching history, though I know that sounds dramatic. It's just what you think when you're alone in a place like that. I walked further in, toward the hill where Margaret and I had sat. The fog was getting thicker, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. I had to go slow, watch for the stones that had fallen. Some were just fragments now, broken pieces of granite scattered like teeth. The church loomed up on my left, a dark shape against the gray sky. Part of the roof had collapsed since I'd last seen it, exposing the rafters. They looked like ribs. I remember thinking that, and then telling myself not to be morbid. Margaret never liked morbid thoughts. She said life was sad enough without borrowing trouble. I reached the hill, or what I thought was the hill. It was hard to tell with the fog. The ground sloped up gently, and I could see the faint outline of the low wall that marked the cemetery's edge. Beyond that, nothing. Just white. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath. I'm not as young as I was, and the walk through the soft ground had taken more out of me than I expected. I set the urn down on a flat stone, no inscription on that one, just a blank marker, and looked around, trying to get my bearings. That's when I saw the footprints. They were in a patch of mud between two headstones, clear as anything. Deep, distinct grooves, the exact pattern of my boots. I know that pattern. I'd stared at it enough times, scraping mud out of the treads with a stick. These were fresh, the edges still sharp, not softened by the mist. The mud was dark, wet, recently turned. I stood there looking at them, and my first thought was that someone else had come out here. Maybe another groundskeeper, though that seemed unlikely. Maybe a walker, though the path was overgrown and the cemetery wasn't on any of the tourist maps. Or maybe a local, someone who knew the place like I did. But the size was right. Too right. And the tread. I knelt down, which hurt my knees more than I care to admit, and looked closer. It was my tread. Exactly. Not similar. Not close. Exact. I could see the little nick in the left heel where I'd caught it on a piece of rebar back in '92. I remember that day. I'd been fixing the gate, and the rebar had been hidden in the bracken, cut right through the leather. I'd had it patched, but the new leather had a different grain, and the tread hadn't lined up perfect, left a little gap. I could see that gap in the print in front of me. I stood up, brushed the mud off my hands. My heart was beating faster than I liked. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd made them myself coming in, but I'd come through the grass, not that patch of mud, and I'd have remembered stepping there. You don't forget your own footprints. I looked behind me at the path I'd taken. My prints were there, sure enough, but faint, just impressions in the grass. These were different. These were deliberate, like someone had stood there, purposeful, looking at the same stones I was looking at. I told myself it was coincidence, that maybe some other bloke had the same boots, same size, same nick in the heel. Could happen. Boots are mass-produced after all. Though the nick, that was harder to explain. But maybe his boot had a similar flaw. Manufacturing defect. I was reaching. I knew I was reaching, but the alternative, that I'd made them and forgotten, or that someone was playing a joke, neither of those sat right. I don't forget things. Not things like that. And nobody knew I was coming out here. I'd told my sister I might go, but not when. Not the exact day. I picked up the urn and walked on, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. The fog was getting thicker, if that was possible. I could barely see the next row of stones. I was heading for the old mausoleum, the one at the highest point of the cemetery. Margaret had liked it there, said it felt like you could see forever, though on a day like this, you couldn't see 10 feet. I kept my eyes on the ground, watching for more prints, and I found them. Another set, just as clear, leading up the hill. They were ahead of me, always ahead. I'd follow them for a few yards, then they'd stop, and I'd find them again further on, like whoever made them was just ahead, just out of sight in the fog. I stopped at the mausoleum steps. It's a small building, granite, with a heavy door that's been locked since before my time. The Mackenzie family, local gentry from the 1800s. 12 of them in there, though you'd never know it from the outside. The steps are worn concave from centuries of feet. I used to sit there on my lunch break, eat the sandwiches Margaret made me. Cheese and pickle, same as that day she visited. I'd sit and listen to the wind and feel like I was the only person left in the world. It was a good feeling then. Lonely, but the kind of lonely you choose. There was something on the steps. A book. Small, leather-bound. The kind you'd use for a diary. It was lying there like someone had just set it down, the pages open to the middle. I knew that book. I'd owned that book. It was my maintenance log from when I worked here. I'd write in it every day, note what I'd done, what needed doing. Grass cut, south section. Stone 147 reset. Gate hinge loose. That sort of thing. I thought I'd thrown it away when I left, or left it in the shed for the next bloke. But there it was, on the mausoleum step, exactly where I used to eat my lunch. I set the urn down again. I was setting it down a lot, I realize, and picked up the book. The pages were damp, but not soaked. The ink had run a little, but I could still read it. My handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. Small, cramped, the letters all pressed together like they're trying to stay warm. I turned to the page it was open to. The date at the top was today's date, October 24th, 2024. Not similar, exact. And below it, an entry. Returned to scatter Margaret's ashes, fog heavy, ground soft, footprints in mud near the McLeod stone. My prints, cannot explain. My hands started to shake. I dropped the book. It landed on the step with a soft sound, the leather slapping against stone. I stepped back, nearly tripped over the urn. This wasn't possible. I hadn't written that. I'd only just arrived. I hadn't even opened the urn yet. How could there be an entry about footprints I'd only just discovered? But it was my handwriting, not similar. Exact. The way I loop my G's, the way my T's cross high. All the little habits you don't notice until you see them staring back at you from a page you don't remember writing. I looked around, but there was nothing, just fog and stones and the silence. The wind had stopped. That was the thing I noticed most. The wind had just stopped. No sound at all, not even the sheep, not even the sea, just my own breathing, loud in my ears. I picked up the book again, forced myself to turn the pages. The entries before today were from 1994, my last weeks of work. Grass cut, stones reset, complaints about the rain, all in my handwriting, all real. I remembered writing them, but the last entry, the one for today, that was new. That was impossible. I told myself it was a trick. Someone had found the book, copied my handwriting. A sick joke. But who? Who would know about this place? About me? About Margaret's ashes? My sister maybe, but she wouldn't. She's not cruel, not like that. And she couldn't copy my hand that perfectly. Nobody could. It takes years to learn someone's handwriting that well. And why? Why go to all that trouble for a joke on an old man scattering his wife's ashes in an abandoned cemetery? I put the book in my pocket. It fit like it belonged there, which I suppose it did. I picked up the urn and walked away from the mausoleum down the other side of the hill. I needed to think, needed to find a place that didn't feel like it was watching me. The fog was so thick now I could barely see my own feet. I stumbled twice, caught myself on headstones. They were cold, damp. The moss came off on my hands, green and slippery. I wiped it on my trousers. Didn't care about the mess. Didn't care about anything except getting away from those prints, that book, that feeling that I was following myself. But the prints were everywhere. Every patch of mud, every soft bit of ground. There they were. Always ahead of me, like I was chasing someone I could never catch. I stopped at the low wall at the edge of the cemetery, where Margaret and I had sat all those years ago. The view was gone, just white. I could have been anywhere, could have been nowhere. I set the urn on the wall and sat beside it, my back to the fog, facing the cemetery, facing all those stones I'd tended, all those names I'd kept clean. They were strangers to me now. The names blurred together. Too many of them. Too many dead. That's when I noticed the cold. Not just the damp air, but a real cold, deep and penetrating. It came up from the ground, through the stone wall, into my bones. My breath started to fog, which was absurd because the air was already full of fog. But I could see it. My own breath, little puffs of white that matched the bigger white around me. I hadn't felt cold like that since the winter of '94, when the heating went out in the church and I'd had to work in 3 jumpers. This was different. This cold had weight to it. It pressed down. I stood up, grabbed the urn. My fingers were numb. I realized I hadn't actually scattered any ashes yet, hadn't opened the urn. I'd been too distracted by prints and books and things that couldn't be. I told myself to focus. That's what Margaret would have wanted. She wouldn't have cared about footprints. She'd have said it was a mystery, something to wonder about, not something to fear. She was braver than me, always was. I walked back toward the center of the cemetery to a spot I'd picked out in my mind, a flat area between two yew trees. The trees were still there, though they'd grown wild, their branches tangling together overhead like they were holding hands. I stood between them, unscrewed the lid of the urn. It made a sound, metal on metal, grating. I'd expected it to be softer somehow, more ceremonial, but it was just a sound, just a thing. I scattered the ashes. They came out in a gray cloud, lighter than I thought they'd be. The wind caught them, not the wind I couldn't hear, but some current of air I couldn't feel, and carried them off into the fog. They disappeared instantly. I shook the urn, got the last bits out. They settled on the grass, gray against the green. I stood there, holding the empty urn, and felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, just empty, like the urn. I'd done what she asked. That should have been the end of it. I should have gone home, put the urn on the mantel next to the photograph, had my tea. That should have been it. But I looked down, and there were more prints. Fresh ones, in the ash. Not my boot prints. Smaller, lighter. The kind of prints a woman might make if she were walking carefully through soft ground. They led away from where I stood between the yew trees toward the church. I followed them. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd see someone. Maybe I thought I'd finally understand. But there was no one. Just the prints. And then they stopped. Just stopped. Like the person had vanished. Which I suppose they had. Which they do in cemeteries. I stood in front of the church door. It's boarded up. Has been for years. The boards were still there, nailed tight. No one could have gone through. But the prints stopped at the door, like whoever made them had walked right through it. I touched the wood. It was cold, wet. The nails were rusted. No one had disturbed it. I turned around, and my own prints were behind me, but they were faint, barely there. The ash prints were clearer, sharper, more real. In the wood of the door, in a crack between the boards, I saw something. A bit of fabric, blue. I pulled it out. It was a hair ribbon, Margaret's hair ribbon, the one she wore in the photograph by the mantel. The one she'd been wearing that day we had our picnic. I'd know it anywhere. Blue satin, faded now, but the same pattern of tiny flowers embroidered along the edge. I'd bought it for her in a shop in Inverness, our first anniversary. She'd laughed, said it was too fancy for every day, but she wore it. She wore it in the photograph, and now it was here, in a crack in a boarded-up church door in an abandoned cemetery 15 miles from home. My hands were shaking again. I put the ribbon in my pocket with the book. It felt warm, which was impossible. Everything was cold. The fog, the stones, my own breath. But the ribbon was warm. I could feel it through the cloth of my trousers like a small, living thing. I stood there, not sure what to do. Part of me wanted to run, to get in the car and drive back to Portree and never think about this place again. But another part, and I'm not proud of this, but it's true, another part wanted to see what would happen next. Wanted to see how far this would go. I walked back to the mausoleum. The book was still there, on the step. I opened it again, turned to the last page. There was a new entry, written below the one about the footprints. It said, "Found ribbon in church door, Margaret's. Don't understand. Don't want to understand. Just want to go home." It was in my handwriting, but I hadn't written it. I'd only just found the ribbon. The ink was still wet. I touched it, and it smudged on my finger. Fresh. Brand new. I looked around, but there was no one. Just fog and stones and silence. I took the book and the ribbon and the urn, and I walked back to the car. The footprints followed me, Mine and the smaller ones, side by side sometimes, like two people walking together. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, kept my eyes on the gate ahead. The car was where I'd left it, though it looked different in the fog, like a ghost of itself. I got in, threw the urn and the book on the passenger seat, the ribbon I kept in my pocket. I started the engine and drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see what might be standing there, watching me go. The drive back was a blur. I don't remember much of it. I must have passed other cars, but I don't recall seeing any. I just stared at the road, at the white line disappearing under the bonnet. When I got home, I put the urn back on the mantel. It looked the same as always. The book I put in the drawer with the car insurance and the boiler warranty and the council letter. The ribbon I put in a small box Margaret had for jewelry. It didn't belong there, but I didn't know where else to put it. Didn't want it near me, but couldn't throw it away. That was a year ago. I still work at the co-op. Still stock shelves. Still sometimes work the till when Jeannie's off. My routine is the same. Alarm at 6:30, tea with 2 sugars, toast, work, home, dinner, television, bed. But things are different now. I notice the silence more. I notice when the wind stops. And every Tuesday, my day off, I drive out to the cemetery. I tell myself it's to check on things, to make sure the ash scattered properly, to tend the graves like I used to. But that's not why I go. I go because every time, the book is there, on the mausoleum step, open to today's date. And every time there are footprints, mine and the smaller ones. Sometimes they're fresh, sometimes they're faded, like they've been there for weeks, but they're always there. And every time I find something new. A button from Margaret's old coat, left on the stone where we had our picnic. A pressed flower, the kind she used to keep in books. Once a letter, in my handwriting, addressed to me. It said, "Stop coming back. Some things should stay buried." I still have it. It's in the drawer with the book. I don't tell anyone. What would I say? My sister thinks I'm grieving. She says it takes time. She's right, of course. It does take time. But this isn't grief. This is something else. This is the cemetery keeping me, or Margaret keeping me. Or maybe I'm keeping myself. I don't know anymore. I used to be logical, used to be rational. Now I just follow the prints and read the book and collect these things that shouldn't exist. The neighbors have noticed. Mrs. Campbell next door, she asked if I was all right. Said she sees me leaving early on Tuesdays, coming back looking tired. I told her I'm fine, just visiting Margaret. She nodded like she understood. But she doesn't. Nobody does. The boy who delivers the paper, he asked why I get 2 copies now. I told him it was a mistake. But it's not a mistake. The second copy always has different headlines. Things that haven't happened yet, or things that happened years ago. I keep them in a pile by the door. I don't read them, I just collect them. At work, Jeannie asked if I was sleeping all right, said I looked pale. I told her it's just the winter coming on. But the truth is, I don't sleep much. I lie in bed and listen to the wind, and sometimes the wind sounds like Margaret humming. Sometimes it sounds like my own voice, saying things I haven't thought yet. And sometimes, it's just silence. The kind of silence you get in a cemetery, when even the dead are holding their breath. I still make tea every morning, 2 sugars, but the mug with the chip in the handle, Margaret's mug, I found it broken last month. Clean break, right down the middle. I don't remember dropping it. I just came downstairs one morning and it was in 2 pieces on the kitchen floor. I glued it back together, but it leaks now. I still use it. I don't mind the tea being cold by the time I finish. Cold is just a temperature. It doesn't mean anything. The car's been acting up. Sometimes I'll be driving out to the cemetery and the radio will turn on by itself. Not to music, just static. And underneath the static, voices. Not words, just tones, like people talking far away. I turn it off, but it comes back on. I've stopped trying to fight it. I just let it play. It's company, I guess. On the long drive through the hills, with the sheep and the empty houses, it's something to listen to besides my own thoughts. Yesterday, I found another set of prints. Not in the cemetery. In my own garden. Small prints, Margaret's size, leading from the back door to the lilac bush she planted. They were in the soft soil where I'd been weeding. I'd only weeded that morning. The prints weren't there when I finished. But they were there when I came out after lunch. I stood in them, put my own boots in the indentations. They fit perfectly, like they were made for me. Like I'd made them myself and forgotten. I don't know what any of it means. I don't think I want to know. Some things are better left as questions. Margaret used to say that. She said the best stories are the ones that don't end, because you get to keep telling them. I suppose that's what I'm doing. Telling the story. Living it, really. Every Tuesday, every footprint, every entry in that book. It's the same story, over and over. But it changes a little each time. A new detail, a new object, a new piece of something I can't quite hold on to. The co-op manager, Mr. Sinclair, he asked me last week if I wanted to take some time off. Said I seemed distracted. I told him I was fine. He looked at me like he didn't believe me, but he let it go. People do that. They let things go. It's easier than asking questions you don't want answers to. I keep working because it's something to do, something normal. Stocking shelves is real. The tins of beans, the packets of biscuits, the milk cartons with their expiration dates, all real. You can hold them. You can't hold a footprint. You can't hold a ribbon that shouldn't exist. Sometimes, when I'm stocking the shelves, I'll find things that aren't supposed to be there. A pressed flower between the loaves of bread. A hair ribbon in the cereal boxes. Once, a small stone from the cemetery, right there on the shelf where the tins of soup should be. I pick them up, put them in my pocket, add them to the collection. I have a box now, under the bed. It's full of these things. The ribbon, the button, the flower, the stone, the letter. I don't look at them. I just add to them. It's what I do now. It's part of the routine. My sister called last night. She asked if I was eating properly. I said yes. She asked if I was sleeping. I said yes. She asked if I wanted her to come visit. I said no. She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. She said, "Duncan, are you sure you're all right?" And I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say no, I'm not all right. I wanted to say I'm finding footprints that belong to me before I make them. I wanted to say the cemetery is writing my story and I'm just living in it. But I didn't. I just said, "I'm fine, Maggie. Just fine. Just need time." She said okay, but she didn't sound like she believed me. I don't blame her. I wouldn't believe me either. After I hung up, I sat in my chair by the window, the one Margaret used to sit in, and I watched the darkness come on. It comes early now, this time of year. By 4:30, it's full dark. The streetlights come on, casting that orange glow on the pavement. I watched people walk past, heads down against the wind, and I wondered if any of them had footprints they didn't recognize, if any of them were living stories they hadn't written. I don't think they are. I think it's just me. I think the cemetery claimed me a long time ago, and I only just noticed. Or maybe I claimed it. Maybe that's what happens when you tend a place for too long. You become part of its geography. Another stone, another marker, another story written in the landscape. I used to think I was keeping the place alive, keeping it tidy. But maybe I was just writing myself into it, one entry at a time, one footprint at a time. It's Tuesday tomorrow. I'll get up at 6:30, make tea, 2 sugars. I'll drive out to the cemetery, bump down that overgrown track. I'll park outside the gate, walk through the fog. I'll find the book on the mausoleum step. I'll read what I've written, what I'm going to write. I'll find something new, a button, a flower, a stone. I'll put it in my pocket. I'll drive home. I'll add it to the box, I'll have dinner, I'll watch television, I'll go to bed, and I'll listen to the wind. That's the routine now. That's the story. It doesn't end. It just repeats with small variations, like a song you can't stop humming, like a footprint you keep stepping into over and over, wondering if this time it'll feel different. But it never does. It just feels like coming home. I still have Margaret's photograph on the mantel. She's still smiling. She's still wearing that blue ribbon in her hair. Sometimes I look at it and I think I see her eyes move, just a little. Just enough to let me know she's still telling the story, still writing it maybe. Or maybe I'm writing it for her. Maybe that's what love is. Writing the same story forever, even when one of you is gone, especially then. The urn is still there too. Empty now, but I keep it. I dust it every Saturday, same as always. I move it when I dust, then put it back. Exactly in the same spot. Margaret would have liked that. She liked things to be just so. She liked knowing where everything belonged. I suppose that's why she keeps coming back to the cemetery, why I keep finding her prints. She's just making sure everything's where it should be, making sure I'm where I should be. And I am. I'm exactly where I should be. Out there, every Tuesday, walking through the fog, following prints I haven't made yet, reading a book I haven't written yet, collecting pieces of a story that doesn't end. It's not scary, not anymore. It was at first, but you get used to things. You get used to anything, if it happens often enough. The first time you see your own footprints ahead of you, it's terrifying. The 10th time, it's just Tuesday. The 50th time, it's routine. That's what nobody tells you about ghosts, about hauntings. They're not dramatic. They're not sudden. They're just patterns, repetitions, small things that happen again and again until they become part of your day, like making tea or stocking shelves. You don't notice you're haunted until you try to stop, until you try to break the pattern. And then you realize you can't, because the pattern is you. The ghost is you. The story is you, told over and over, and you can't walk away because you're the one telling it. So I keep going. Every Tuesday, every footprint, every entry. It's what I do. It's who I am now. The groundskeeper, the widower, the man who finds his own story written before he lives it. It's not a bad life. It's just a life that doesn't end. A story that keeps telling itself. And sometimes, when the fog is thick enough and the wind has stopped and the silence is complete, I follow those footprints just to see where I'll go. Just to see what I'll write next. Just to see what I'll find. It's always the same, and it's always different, and it's always waiting. The cemetery is always waiting. The book is always waiting. The story is always waiting, and so am I. I'm still here. I'm still working. I'm still keeping the grounds, even if the grounds are keeping me. Every October, I find my footprints before I make them. Sometimes I follow them just to see where I'll go. My name is Frank, and I'm from Millfield, Pennsylvania. I moved into the house on Oak Street last April. It's a 2-story place, white siding, green shutters that need painting. My sister Claire lives with me. She's younger, 32, just out of a divorce. The rent's cheap because of the view. That's what the landlord said. Because of the view. He didn't look at me when he said it. The view is a cemetery, St. Mary's, though the church itself closed in 1988. It's right across the road, maybe 50 feet from my front porch. You can see it from the kitchen window while you're washing dishes. Claire jokes about it. She says at least the neighbors are quiet. She says it a lot. It's her favorite joke. I work for the township. Property assessments mostly. I drive around, measure lots, update records. It's peaceful work. I like the numbers. They always add up the same way twice. That's more than you can say for most things. Millfield's the kind of place where people leave their cars running in the winter while they run into the post office. The main street has a diner, a hardware store, and a funeral home that doubles as the ambulance service. Everyone knows everyone's business, but they pretend they don't. The cemetery fits right in. It's been there since 1847. The newer section is neat, but the old part is overgrown. Headstones lean like tired soldiers. The iron gate rusted open years ago. Kids used to play there. Still do sometimes. You can hear them laughing on summer evenings. It echoes between the stones. Claire works at the library 3 days a week. She brings home books I never read. She cooks dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I cook the other nights, simple stuff. Meatloaf, chicken. We watch television after, some show about people fixing up houses. We don't talk much. It's comfortable. The cemetery is just part of the scenery. At night, the security light on the tool shed makes the stones glow pale. It looks peaceful. I've always thought so. My routine is steady. Up at 6, coffee, out the door by 7:30, home by 5. Claire's usually reading on the porch. We eat around 6. In the summer, I mow the lawn. In the winter, I shovel. The cemetery gets plowed by the township, same as the roads. Old man Garvey does it. He's been driving that plow for 30 years. He doesn't talk much either. The first thing happened in late May. I came home and the gate was closed. Not just pushed shut, but latched. The latch is rusted orange. You have to lift it just right. I hadn't seen it closed in months. I figured Garvey had done it. Maybe he was testing the hinges. I went inside. Claire was at the stove. I asked if she'd seen anyone messing with the gate. She said no. She asked why. I said it was closed. She shrugged. "Maybe the wind," she said. But there hadn't been wind. That was a still day. Hot. The kind where the air sits on you. I didn't think about it again until the flowers. Someone had put fresh daisies on a grave near the back. A grave from 1862. Belonged to a Mary Donnelly. The flowers were bright white, wrapped in that green florist paper that holds water. They couldn't have been there more than a day or two. I noticed them on my way to work. I mentioned it to Mrs. Hennessy at the township office. She keeps the cemetery records. She said maybe it was a descendant. I said Mary Donnelly died in 1862. Mrs. Hennessy just looked at me. She has that way, like she knows something and wishes she didn't. The motion light started acting up in June. It's on the side of our house, lights up the driveway. It would click on at odd hours, 2 in the morning, 3. I'd wake up and see the yellow glow through my bedroom blinds. The first few times, I thought it was a deer. We get them, or a raccoon. But it happened every night for a week. I finally got up at 3 and looked out. Nothing. Just the cemetery across the road. Quiet. The light went off after a minute. I stood there in the dark, waiting for it to click back on. It didn't. I went back to bed. Claire slept through it. She's always slept like the dead. That's her joke, not mine. I started noticing the silence, not the normal quiet of a small town. This was different. I'd be sitting on the porch after dinner and the insects would just stop, all at once, like someone turned off a switch. The air would feel heavier. Claire said she didn't notice. She had her headphones in, listening to some podcast. I sat there in the stillness and watched the cemetery. Nothing moved, not even the leaves on the maple tree in the center of the old section. Then the insects would start again, slowly, one by one, like they were remembering their job. In July, the township sent me to do a proper count of the graves. They're talking about making St. Mary's a historical site. Tourism. That means funding. That means accurate records. I took my clipboard and a map from 1972, the last time anyone bothered. I walked the rows. I counted carefully. I got 312 graves. I counted again, same method. 308. I walked the perimeter, checked against the map. The map showed 310. I counted a third time, 315. I stood in the center and looked around. The stones seemed to be in different places, not dramatically, just shifted. A foot to the left, a foot to the right, like they'd been eased out of line over the years. But some of them were new, 1950s, 1960s. They shouldn't have moved at all. I went to see Garvey. He lives in a trailer behind the fire hall. I asked him about the gate. He said he hadn't touched it. I asked about the plowing. He said he just cleared the main path, never touched the old section. He looked at his boots when he talked. Didn't meet my eyes. I asked if he'd ever noticed anything off. He said, "Like what?" I couldn't think how to answer. He offered me a beer. I said no thanks. I've been off it since my last checkup. 6 months now. Claire's proud of me. I don't feel any different. That evening, I was washing dishes. Claire was on the porch. I heard her talking. Just casual conversation. I thought maybe she'd called someone. I glanced out the window. She was alone, sitting in the wicker chair, looking toward the cemetery. I dried my hands and went out. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. She looked confused. "No one," she said. I asked if she was sure. She said yes, but I heard her voice, clear as anything. It had that rhythm you use when you're answering a question, the back and forth of it. I didn't press. She already thinks I'm too focused on the cemetery. She says it's just old stones. She's right. She usually is. The footsteps started in August. I'd be in bed, almost asleep, and hear them on the gravel path that runs along the cemetery's edge. It's a distinct sound. Gravel has a voice. This was steady, like someone walking with purpose. The first night, I got up and looked. Nothing. The gate was open. The moon was out, bright enough to see the whole place. Empty. The next night, same thing. I mentioned it to Claire over breakfast. She said it was probably Garvey checking the plow. I said Garvey doesn't work nights. She said maybe it was an animal. I said animals don't walk like that. She didn't have an answer for that one. I started staying up later, waiting for the footsteps. They always came between 2 and 3. Always the same pace, not hurried, not slow, just walking. I tried recording it on my phone. When I played it back, there was nothing. Just wind. But there hadn't been wind that night. I know there hadn't been. Mrs. Hennessy retired in September. New clerk is a young guy, fresh from college. I asked him about the cemetery records. He pulled up the digital files. They show 310 graves, exactly what the 1972 map shows. I asked if he'd ever been out there. He said no. I asked if he'd noticed any discrepancies. He looked at me like I was speaking another language. "Discrepancies?" he said. I said never mind. Claire started noticing things too, small things. The porch light would be off in the morning, even though she always left it on. Her keys would be on the counter instead of the hook by the door. She blamed me. I blamed her. Neither of us remembered moving them. Then her books started shifting. She'd leave one on the nightstand, find it on the kitchen table. She said I was messing with her. I said I wasn't. We both knew I wasn't. The whispering started in October. I'd be in the living room, Claire in her bedroom, and I'd hear someone say something, just a phrase, half a sentence. I'd call out, thinking she'd ask me something. She'd say she hadn't spoken. This happened 3-4 times a week, always when I was alone in a room, always just loud enough to hear, not loud enough to make out the words. It had a cadence, like a name, like someone calling. I took a walk through the cemetery on a Sunday afternoon. Claire was at the library. I went to the Mary Donnelly grave. The daisies were still there. They hadn't wilted, not even browned at the edges. That was impossible. They'd been there 5 months. I touched them. They felt real, fresh. I looked around. The cemetery was empty. The air was still. The insects were silent. I counted the graves in the old section again. I got 47. The map said 46. I counted again, 45. I felt something cold on the back of my neck, like a breath. I turned. Nothing. Just stones and sky. That night, the footsteps stopped outside my bedroom window, not by the road, right under the window. The bedroom faces the side yard, not the cemetery. There's just grass there. A flower bed Claire planted. I lay frozen, listening. The floorboards in the hall creaked. Claire was asleep. I could hear her breathing. This was something else. I got up, slow, and looked out the window. The motion light was on. No one there. But there were footprints in the dew. They came from the direction of the road, crossed the yard, stopped under my window. Just stopped. No prints leading away. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the cemetery. The security light on the shed flickered. Once, twice, then it steadied. At 4:17, I saw someone, just a shape moving between the stones. Not walking on the path, moving through the rows. I couldn't see details, just a darkness against the pale stones. It stopped, turned, faced my house. Then it was gone. Not walked away. Just not there. Claire found me in the morning, still at the window. She asked what was wrong. I told her. All of it. The counting, the flowers, the footsteps, the shape. She listened. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me I was imagining things. She just said, "We should talk to someone." We talked to Old Man Garvey. He was the only one who might know. We found him at the diner, having his coffee. I asked about the cemetery's history. He looked at Claire, then at me. "You live across from it," he said. It wasn't a question. I said yes. He stirred his coffee. "My father plowed that road," he said. "He told me never to stop there, not even for a flat tire." I asked why. He said, "Because some places, the ground remembers who it wants." Claire asked what that meant. He didn't answer. He just said, "You should move." He left money on the table and walked out. We didn't see him again. He stopped plowing the cemetery path after that. Township had to hire someone from the next town. Costs more. The cold spots started in November. I'd walk into a room and the temperature would drop, just in one spot, like standing in a refrigerator. Claire felt them too. We'd be watching TV and she'd shiver. I'd touch her arm, her skin would be ice. The thermostat wouldn't change. Just that spot. They moved around the house, the kitchen corner by the stove, the hallway outside the bathroom, my bedroom closet. Always just one place for a few minutes, then gone. One night, I heard my name, clear as Claire saying it. But Claire was at work. The library stays open late on Thursdays. I was alone. It came from the living room. I stood in the kitchen doorway, looking in. The room was empty. The whisper came again. "Frank." Just that. My name. I answered. I said, "Yes?" There was a pause, then a sound like a sigh. The cold spot appeared in the middle of the rug. I could see my breath. I started checking the cemetery records at work. The digital files show 310 graves, but I found the original paper ledgers in the basement. They show 308, then 312, then 306. The handwriting is the same, but the numbers change. Same book. Different counts. I thought maybe I was misreading. I'm not. The ink is faded but clear. The numbers are different. Someone, maybe me, I don't remember, had penciled notes in the margin. "Recount required,"
Discrepancy noted. Unable to verify. Dates from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, all the way back. I asked the new clerk if he'd seen the ledgers.
He said they'd been digitized. He didn't see the point in keeping the old books. I asked what happened to them. He said they were probably thrown out. I went to the basement. The ledgers were gone. I know they were there. I'd seen them the week before. Claire stopped sleeping. She'd wake up at 2, 3, hear the footsteps. She said they were closer now, not by the road. In our yard. She'd look out and see nothing, but she'd hear them, crunching on the gravel we don't have. We have grass.
But she heard gravel. I heard it too. The voice started calling her name, just like it called mine. She'd be in the shower, and she'd hear someone say Claire from the other side of the curtain. She'd call back, thinking it was me. I'd be in the garage. She came to me one night, crying. She said she heard her ex-husband's voice. He lives in Ohio, hasn't called in a year. But she heard him, clear as day, asking where she put his keys. He always lost his keys. She heard him ask, from the kitchen, while she was in the living room. I held her. We didn't sleep. I took a day off work. I went to the cemetery with a can of white spray paint. I know that's illegal. Vandalism. But I needed to know. I marked each stone with a number. 1 through whatever I counted. It took all morning. I counted as I went. I got 318. I took photos. I went home.
Had lunch. I went back. The paint was still there. I counted again. 314. 4 stones were missing numbers. Not the paint. The stones themselves. Different ones. I counted a third time. 322. There were stones I didn't recognize. Same style, same age, but I'd swear they weren't there that morning. I took more photos. I went home and compared them. The stones had moved, not much, but they had, and there were more, or fewer, depending on when I looked. That evening I found a stone I'd marked, number 47. It was in my garage, just sitting there against the wall. No dirt on it, no marks from being moved. Just there, like it belonged. I didn't touch it. I called Claire. She came out. She saw it. She touched it. It was cold, colder than the air. She asked how it got there. I said I didn't know. We left it. We left the garage open that night. In the morning, it was gone. No marks in the dust, no sign it had ever been there. But I had a photo. Claire had touched it. We both knew. The neighbor on our left, Mrs. Gable, she's lived here since 1965. I asked her about the cemetery. She was watering her tomatoes. She said, "You don't want to know." I said I did. She turned off the hose. "Those graves," she said, "they're not all filled." I asked what she meant. She said, "Some of them are waiting." She went inside. She hasn't spoken to me since. I looked up the property records. Our house was built in 1953. The land was part of the cemetery's original lot. They sold it off, needed the money. There's a clause in the deed. Subject to prior claims. I asked the township lawyer what that means. He said it's just legal language. I asked about the cemetery. He said it's abandoned. I said it's not. He looked at me. "Frank," he said, "you need to take some time off." I started dreaming about the graves, not nightmares, just dreams where I'm counting. I count and the numbers never come out the same, and someone's watching me, not a person, just a presence. It doesn't move. It just is. I wake up exhausted. Claire moved out last week. She said she couldn't take it. She said she loved me, but the house wasn't right. She said she heard voices in the walls. She said she felt someone sit on the edge of her bed at night. She said it wasn't safe. She left most of her books. She left her keys on the hook. They were there the next morning. She'd taken them with her. I saw her put them in her bag, but there they were. I'm alone now. The footsteps are louder. They come up the porch steps. They stop at the door. They don't knock. They just stand there. I can feel the weight of them through the wood. The cold spots have merged. The whole house is cold. The thermostat reads 72. It feels like 50. Yesterday, I found a gravestone in my bedroom. Small. Just a marker, really. Like for a child. It had my name on it. Not my full name. Just Frank. No dates. I called the police. Officer Danvers came. He's new. He looked at the stone. He said, "Where'd you get this?" I said it was just there. He said, "People don't just leave gravestones in houses." He asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. He said he'd file a report. He left the stone. He said it was evidence. He'd send someone to pick it up. No one came. I went to the cemetery today. I counted one last time. I got 327. I counted the stones that have my name. There are 3, all different. All the same. I looked at the Mary Donnelly grave. The daisies are still there, fresh as the day they appeared. I touched them. They felt like nothing, like air. The security light on the shed is flashing now. On, off. Steady. Like a signal. I watch it from my window. It's been flashing for an hour. I know what it means. I don't know how I know, but I do. I keep the porch light on. I don't know why. It doesn't help, but I do it. I still keep the porch light on, facing the stones. My name is Hanna, and I'm from Prague. I guess I should start by saying that I don't really believe in any of this stuff. Ghosts, curses, whatever. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I work with facts, footage, audio levels. I spend my days trying to capture what's real, not what's... whatever this was. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. But I'm getting ahead of things. It was last summer, July, one of those weeks where the heat just sits on the city like a wet blanket. I'd been hired. Well, hired is a strong word. I'd gotten a grant, a small one, enough to keep me going for a couple months while I worked on this project about forgotten burial grounds. The Jewish cemetery on the outskirts, the one behind the old Skoda factory that closed down in '09, that was supposed to be my centerpiece. It's not one of the famous ones. It's small, maybe 2 acres, tucked back behind chain-link fencing that's more rust than metal. The city doesn't maintain it. Some volunteer group mows the front section once a year, but the back half is just wild. I mean really wild. Blackberry brambles 8 feet high, weeds so thick you can't see the stones. The cicadas were insane that summer. This constant drone that became the background hum to everything. I'd been out there 3 days already, just scouting, getting B-roll of the vegetation, the way the light hits the broken headstones. I'm not religious. Never have been. My family's Jewish, technically, but we're the kind that celebrates Christmas and maybe lights candles once a year if someone remembers. My grandmother died when I was 12, and after that, the whole thing just faded. So this wasn't a personal pilgrimage. It was a job. A story I wanted to tell about memory and neglect. That's what I told the grant committee. That's what I told my boyfriend Tomasz, who thought the whole thing was morbid but supported me anyway. He's a programmer, very logical. We've been together 4 years, living together for 2, in this tiny flat in Zhishkov with a balcony that overlooks nothing special. He's the kind of person who falls asleep to podcasts about economic theory. I love him for that solidness. The cemetery is about a 40-minute bus ride, then a 15-minute walk through this industrial no-man's land. The factory is just a husk now, windows broken, graffiti everywhere. You can smell the stagnant water from the drainage ditches. There's wild garlic growing everywhere, this sharp, almost sweet smell that mixes with the rot. The first day I went, I just walked the perimeter. The second day, I brought my camera, a Canon XC15, nothing fancy but reliable, and started getting establishing shots. The third day, I decided to start the actual narration. I had a script, kind of. Just bullet points. I wanted it to feel natural, not overproduced. I got there around 10 in the morning. The heat was already building. I remember my shirt sticking to my back before I'd even set up the tripod. I had my field recorder, a Zoom H5 that I'd synced with the camera. I'd done this 100 times. Check levels, test audio, slate it with my hand if I have to. The plan was simple. Wide shot of the cemetery, me walking into frame, doing a piece to camera about the history. I'd researched it. The cemetery dated back to the 1880s, served a community that mostly died out or was deported during the war. After 45, there weren't enough families left to maintain it. It fell into disrepair. Standard story. Sad, but not unusual. I framed the shot with the overgrown section in the background. You could see maybe a dozen headstones peeking through the green. I pressed record on both devices, walked into frame, and started talking. "Here we are," I said, my voice sounding weirdly loud after the cicada hum. "The old Jewish cemetery of Mishla, established 1883. At its peak, it held over 500 graves. Now, fewer than 100 markers remain visible." I gestured toward the brambles. "The rest are lost. Not to time exactly, but to neglect. To the simple fact that no one is left to remember." I paused, letting that hang. I remember thinking it sounded a bit dramatic, but usable. I finished the take, walked back to the camera, and stopped recording. I always check playback in the field. Always. It's a habit from film school. Nothing worse than getting home and finding your audio clipped or your focus was off. So I sat down on this broken chunk of concrete that used to be part of the factory wall, put on my headphones, and watched the take. The video looked fine. A little overexposed in the highlights, but fixable. My voice came through clear. But about 30 seconds in, there was this, I don't know, a flutter in the audio, like a dropout, but not quite. I listened again. It was subtle, almost like a second voice underneath mine. But not really a voice, more like a whisper of static that had shape. I figured it was a cable issue. The heat can do that, make connections fussy. I made a mental note to check the XLR cable when I got home. I did 3 more takes. By the 4th, the sweat was dripping into my eyes and the cicadas were so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. I packed up around 1, took the bus back. Tomasz was at his desk when I walked in, hunched over his laptop. He asked how it went. I said fine, mentioned the audio glitch. He suggested I clean the contacts with alcohol. Practical. That's him? That night, I transferred the footage to my laptop. I always do a rough pass before bed, just to see what I have. I pulled up the first take, the one with the flutter. This time, listening on my studio monitors, it was more pronounced. That static whisper was there, but now it seemed to align with my words. When I said Mikkel, there was this faint echo, but it wasn't my voice. It was lower, harsher. I cranked the volume, isolated the track. It was definitely speech. I could make out consonants, but it was buried so deep in the noise floor, it was like trying to hear a conversation through a wall. I called Tomasz over. He listened, headphones on, that focused programmer face. He said it was probably RF interference. The factory, even abandoned, might have old wiring, or a transformer nearby. He pulled up a spectral analyzer, showed me these spikes in the low mids. See? Environmental noise. You can filter it out. He built me a quick EQ preset. It did clean it up, mostly. But that night, as I was falling asleep, I kept hearing it, that shape in the static. The next day, I went back. I brought a different mic, just in case. A shotgun this time, more directional. I decided to get some close-up shots of individual graves. There's one section, near the back, where a few stones are still accessible. You have to push through this archway of blackberry canes that scratch the hell out of your arms. I wore a long-sleeve shirt, but it was so hot I almost immediately regretted it. The air back there is different, stiller. The cicada drone is muffled, replaced by this low buzz of flies. The smell of wild garlic is stronger, mixed with something else, something sweet and wrong, like fruit left in the sun too long. I found a grave I liked. The inscription was still legible. Ruzhena Kohutova, 1864 to 1921, beloved mother. The stone had this crack running through it, and moss had colonized the letters. I set up for a detail shot. I thought I'd do a voiceover later, but I decided to record some scratch track on the spot, just to note my thoughts. I pressed record. Ruzhena Kohutova, I said, trying to keep my voice low, respectful. Her stone is one of the few in this section that's still fully legible. The crack suggests frost damage, but the moss... I paused. There was a sound. Not a cicada, not a fly. A dry rustle, like paper being crumpled. I looked around. Nothing. Just weeds and stones. I continued. The moss suggests moisture retention. This area probably doesn't drain well. I finished the take. As I was packing the tripod, I heard the rustle again, louder. I turned and for a second, just a second, I thought I saw something move behind a headstone about 20 feet away. A shape, low to the ground, but the heat does that. Mirage shimmer. I told myself it was a cat, or a fox. They're common out here. I did a few more graves. Each time that rustling came, always just after I stopped recording. I started to feel, I don't know, watched. But that's stupid, it's a cemetery. The whole point is you're surrounded by the dead. It's supposed to feel heavy. I pushed through it. Around noon, I sat down to check footage. I pulled up the Ruzhena clip first. The audio was clean, no weird static. I felt relieved. Then I played the second clip, the one for a grave I hadn't identified yet. The stone was worn down to almost nothing, just a smooth nub. In the video, I started talking. This marker is too eroded to read, possibly a child's grave, given the size. But then, underneath my voice, I heard it again, that whisper static. And this time, I could make out a word. Clear as anything. It said, Kohout. Just that. Kohout, the surname from the previous grave. My blood went cold. I rewound it, listened again. It was there. Faint, but there. A voice that wasn't mine, saying a name I'd only spoken once, in a different take, 10 minutes earlier. I packed up my stuff right then. I didn't even bother with the tripod, just threw everything in my bag. The rustling sound was everywhere now, all around me, like the weeds themselves were whispering. I got back to the bus stop, my heart hammering. On the ride home, I kept my headphones on, listened to that clip maybe 20 times. It didn't change. It was there. Tomasz was making coffee when I walked in. I must have looked like hell because he just stopped and said, "What happened?" I told him. The whole thing. The voice, the name. He listened, but I could see the skepticism. Not mean, just... His brain was already working on explanations. Could you have said it earlier? Subconsciously? Maybe you were thinking about it and mumbled? I wasn't thinking about it, I said. I moved on. And the mic didn't pick it up on the first take, just the second? Right. He sat down with my laptop, pulled the audio into Pro Tools. He isolated the frequencies, inverted the phase, all his technical magic. It's definitely a voice, he said finally. Or voice-like. But Hannah, it could be anything. Radio interference that happens to sound like that word. Or you did say it, and the shotgun mic picked up a weird reflection. Sound does strange things in open spaces. I wanted to believe him. I did. But that night, I dreamed about the cemetery. Not scary, just real.
I was walking through the brambles, and every stone I passed whispered its name. I woke up at 4 in the morning, drenched in sweat, and I could smell wild garlic in our bedroom. I got up, checked all the windows. They were closed. The next day, I didn't go to the cemetery. I told myself I needed a break. I stayed home, tried to edit what I had. But every time I opened the project, I heard that whisper. Kohout. Kohout. It was like it had infected the file. I called the grant administrator, a woman named Jana at the Jewish Heritage Foundation. I asked, casually, if anyone else had reported anything strange while working at the Michael Cemetery. She laughed. Strange how? I don't know. Audio issues, equipment malfunctions. Not that I've heard, but it's an old place. Bad wiring nearby, maybe? I could tell she thought I was incompetent. I thanked her and hung up. Tomasz suggested I take a different approach. Don't do narration on site. Record it here, in the studio. Use the footage but separate the audio. See if that helps. It was a good idea. So the day after, I went back just for visuals. No mic, just the camera on a stabilizer. I figured I'd get some tracking shots, really cinematic stuff, and worry about the story later. I got there early, just after 9. The heat was already building. I walked the perimeter, shot the factory from different angles, got some nice close-ups of the rust on the fence. I felt professional again, in control. I decided to push into the back section, the really overgrown part I'd only seen from a distance. There was a path, kind of, just a depression in the weeds where water must run when it rains. I followed it. The brambles were so thick they formed a tunnel. My stabilizer beeped. It was working overtime to keep the shot steady. I emerged into this clearing I hadn't seen before, maybe 20 feet across. The ground was bare dirt, packed hard. In the center was a gravestone that looked different, cleaner. The inscription was sharp, recent. Peter Kovacs, 1978 to 2023. I did the math. He died last year. That was weird. The cemetery had been closed to new burials since the 60s. I filmed it. I figured it was a test stone, maybe for a restoration project. Then I heard the rustling again, right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But the air had changed. It was colder. Not a lot, but enough to notice. In that heat, even a few degrees felt like a draft from a freezer. I checked my phone. No service, which was normal out here. I decided I'd gotten enough. I turned to leave. That's when I saw them. Footprints. In the hard dirt. They were fresh, the edges still sharp. They led from the gravestone to the edge of the clearing, then disappeared into the brambles. I looked down at my shoes. I was wearing sneakers, the same ones I'd worn every day. The prints were barefoot, small, maybe a child's. My stomach dropped. I told myself it was a trick of the light, the way the dirt was packed. But they were so clear. 5 toes, a heel. I filmed them. I don't know why. Some part of my brain was still in documentary mode. Evidence. Get evidence. I got out of there fast. I didn't run, but I walked quicker than I had before. The brambles scratched my arms. The cicadas were deafening. When I got back to the bus stop, I realized I was shaking. On the ride home, I watched the footage of the footprints on my camera's LCD screen. They looked even more real on video. I texted Tomasz. Something's wrong. He called me immediately. I told him about the stone, the cold, the footprints. He was quiet for a long time. Hannah, he said finally, you need to stop going out there. Seriously, this is messing with you. I have to finish the project. The project isn't worth this. You're not sleeping. You're seeing things. It was on video, Tomasz. Then show me when you get home. We'll look at it together. But promise me you won't go back alone. I promised. But I knew I was lying. That night, we watched the footage. The gravestone looked normal. The footprints looked plausible. Tomasz pointed out that the ground wasn't as hard as I thought. See, it's cracked here. Someone could have made those prints earlier. Kids, maybe, exploring. Barefoot? It's summer. Kids do weird things. He tried to be reassuring, but I could see he was worried, not about ghosts, about me. He kept asking if I'd been taking my anxiety medication. I had. It didn't help. I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, I got up and opened my laptop. I pulled up the audio from the first day, the one with the whisper. I listened to it on loop. Kohout. 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 After the 10th time, I heard something else, a phrase. It was so faint I thought I was imagining it, but I cranked the volume until the hiss was a roar, and there it was, buried in the noise. She's waiting by the stone. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was racing. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. In the mirror, I looked like a stranger. My eyes were hollow. I could smell wild garlic on my skin, even though I'd showered. The next day, Tomasz went to work. I told him I was staying home until I did for most of the morning. I tried to edit other projects, but I kept pulling up the cemetery footage. I watched the clip of the footprints until I knew every frame. Then I did something stupid. I opened the audio file in a spectral editor. I isolated every frequency, and I found more. Whispers layered on whispers, names, dates, fragments of sentences, all in my voice, but things I'd never said. The child's grave is unmarked. The water table is high. They buried them 3 deep in 42. I'd never researched any of that. I didn't know if it was true. I called Tomasz at lunch. I need you to listen to something. I played him one of the fragments. The water table is high. That's your voice, he said. I know, but you didn't say it. No. There was a long pause. I could hear him typing in the background. Hannah, I'm looking at the waveform. This isn't spliced in, it's not overlaid, it's part of the original recording. It's like you said it, but the main track is silent at that moment. What does that mean? I don't know, but I don't like it. I hung up and sat there, staring at my screen. The project folder was open. I had dozens of files now. Audio, video, logs. I clicked on a video I hadn't watched yet. It was from the second day, the one where I'd filmed the eroded marker. I'd been so focused on the whisper that I hadn't really watched the video itself. I hit play. The shot was shaky. I was moving through the brambles. Then I emerged into the clearing where Peter Kovács's grave was. But in this video, from 2 days ago, the gravestone wasn't there. Just a bare patch of earth. And in the audio, underneath my narration about the eroded marker, I heard my own voice say, Peter Kovács, 1978-2023. He shouldn't be here. I checked the date on the file. July 12th. I'd found the stone on July 14th. The video showed the location before the stone appeared. I stopped breathing. For a full minute, I just sat there, not moving. Then I grabbed my keys. I had to go back. I had to see if the stone was really there, if I'd imagined it, if this was some kind of, I don't know, psychotic break. That made more sense than the alternative. The bus ride felt longer this time. I didn't bring any equipment except my phone. I just wanted to look. The factory looked the same. The fence looked the same. I pushed through the brambles, ignoring the scratches. I found the clearing. The stone was there. Peter Kovács, 1978-2023. I touched it. It was real. Cold, even in the heat. I took a picture with my phone. Then I looked at the ground where the footprints had been. They were gone. The dirt was smooth, undisturbed. But there was something else. A depression.
about 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, like a grave that had been filled in recently. The earth was mounded slightly, covered with fresh weeds that had been trampled. I called Tomasz. No answer. I texted him the photo of the stone. Then I texted, "Something is very wrong here." I don't know how long I stood there. The cicadas stopped. That's what I remember most. That constant drone just ceased. The silence was so sudden it hurt my ears. Then I heard a beep. Electronic. Familiar. I looked around. Nothing. Then another beep. It was coming from the mound of earth. I should have left. I know that now. But I didn't. I knelt down. The ground was soft. I brushed away the weeds. There, half buried, was a camera. A Canon XC15. My exact model. The beep was the low battery warning. I pulled it out. It was caked in dirt, but the screen was still on. It had maybe 5% battery left. I brushed off the lens. The camera was mine. I mean, it was identical to mine. Same scratches on the body from when I dropped it in Brno last year. Same sticker from the rental house. I turned it over. The serial number was different. 1 digit off. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I found the memory card slot. There was a card inside. I had my laptop in my bag. I'd brought it, just in case. I sat down right there, in the dirt, and booted it up. The card slid in. It mounted immediately. There was one video file. The thumbnail showed the clearing. I double-clicked. It was me, on screen. Same clothes I was wearing, same everything. I was kneeling in the dirt, just like I was now, holding a camera. The timestamp in the corner read July 14th, 2026, 3 years from today. The audio was muffled, but I could hear my voice. I found it, just like I knew I would. The hole, the camera, it's all here. The video me looked up, stared directly into the lens. "Hannah," she said, "don't upload the footage. Don't upload anything. They'll find you." The video cut out. The camera in my hands beeped one last time and died. I sat there, the dead screen reflecting my own face. The cicadas started up again, slowly, like an engine turning over. I looked at the mound. It was just a mound. But in the video, it was a hole. A fresh excavation. I stood up. My legs were numb. I walked back to the bus stop in a daze. I didn't look back. Tomasz called me when I was halfway home. "Hannah, what the hell is this photo? Where are you?" "I'm coming home." "What's going on? You sound..." "I'll explain when I get there." But I didn't. I couldn't. How do you explain that you found a camera from the future with a video of yourself warning yourself? He'd have me committed. Maybe he should. When I got home, he was waiting. He'd made tea. He does that when he's scared. We sat at the kitchen table and I told him everything. The video, the camera, the timestamp. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Show me." "I can't. The battery died." "The memory card. Show me the file." I opened my laptop. The card was still mounted, but the file was gone. The entire card was blank, formatted, like it had never been used. Tomasz looked at me. I could see the calculation in his eyes. "Hannah," he said gently, "when was the last time you slept?" I didn't answer. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, smelling wild garlic. The next day I stayed home. Tomasz went to work, but he called every hour. I didn't answer. I was going through my project files, every piece of footage, every audio clip, and I found more. In every recording, buried in the noise floor, there was my voice, saying things I hadn't said yet, describing graves I hadn't filmed. In one clip from day one, underneath my narration about the cemetery's founding, I heard, "The rear section floods in spring. That's why the stones sink." I checked my notes. I hadn't researched that, but a quick search online confirmed it. Flooding, water table. Everything the whispers had said was true. I called Tomasz. "I need to show you something. Come home." He did. I played him the clip, showed him the research. He was quiet. "This is impossible," he said. "I know. But it's happening." "Yes." We sat there, the laptop between us, the afternoon light fading. Finally, he said, "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. I could abandon the project, delete everything, but the grant money was half gone, and more than that, I needed to know. That's the filmmaker in me, I guess. The need to see the story through. "I have to go back," I said. "One more time. With you. We document everything. Multiple cameras, multiple audio sources. If something happens, we'll have proof." He agreed. Not because he believed in ghosts, but because he believed in me, in solving the problem, in data. We went the next morning, Saturday. We both carried cameras. I had my Canon, he had his phone, a GoPro, a field recorder. We were a mobile production unit. The cemetery looked the same. The factory, the fence, the brambles. We pushed through to the clearing. The stone was still there. Petr Kovács, 1978 to 2023. Tomasz photographed it from every angle. The depression was still there too. But no camera. The earth was undisturbed. "I don't understand," I said. "Maybe you imagined it," Tomasz offered, but his voice was uncertain. We set up anyway. I decided to do a piece to camera, right there in the clearing. I wanted to narrate what had been happening, a meta-documentary. Tomasz would film me and I'd film him filming me. Redundancy. I pressed record on my camera. Tomasz pressed record on his phone. I started talking. "My name is Hanna and I'm a filmmaker. For the past week, I've been documenting this cemetery and I've experienced phenomena I can't explain. Audio anomalies. Visual inconsistencies. A sense of..." I stopped. The rustling. It was back. But this time, it was everywhere. Not just behind me, but all around. The brambles were shaking. Tomasz heard it too. He lowered his phone. "What is that?" "I don't know." Then the cicadas stopped. That same sudden, painful silence. And a voice spoke. Not a whisper, not static. A clear, calm voice right behind me. It said in Czech, "Vy ste na něj příliš dlouho čekali." "You've waited too long for him." I spun around. No one. Tomasz was pale. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." "What did it say?" I translated. His eyes widened. "Who's him?" I didn't know. I still don't. But I felt this pull, this compulsion to walk deeper into the overgrowth. Past the clearing, to the very back of the cemetery, where the weeds were so thick you couldn't see the fence. I started walking. Tomasz grabbed my arm. "Hanna, don't." "I have to." "Why?" "I don't know. I have to." He followed me. We pushed through vegetation that clawed at us. The air got colder. The smell of wild garlic was overwhelming, mixed with that sweet rot. And then we saw it. A hole. Not a depression. A proper hole, 6 feet deep, the earth piled beside it, freshly dug. At the bottom was a coffin, not old, new wood. The lid was closed. Tomasz backed away. "We need to call the police." "Wait," I said. There was something on the coffin lid. A camera. My camera.
the same one I'd found before. I climbed down into the hole. Tomasz was shouting something, but I couldn't hear him. The silence was absolute. I picked up the camera. It turned on. Battery at 50%. There was a file. I pressed play. It was me. Again. But this time, I was older. Lines on my face, gray in my hair. I was standing in the clearing, but it looked different. More overgrown. The timestamp read, July 14th, 2029. 6 years from now. My future self looked into the camera and said, "If you're watching this, it means you didn't listen. You uploaded the footage. You're on the schedule now. Every recording you make contains tomorrow's script. You'll try to change it, but you can't. I've tried. God, I've tried. The hole is for him, for Peter. He's waiting. He's been waiting since 2023. You'll bring him the camera. You'll bring him the footage. It's what you do. It's what we do." The video ended. I looked at the coffin. The nameplate read Peter Kovacs, 1978-2023. Tomasz was shouting my name. I climbed out of the hole. We ran. We didn't stop until we were on the bus. He was asking me what I saw. I couldn't speak. I just showed him the camera. He looked at the video, looked at me. "This is a prank," he said. "It has to be. It's my face. Deepfakes, AI, something. Tomasz, it's my camera." We didn't talk the rest of the way home. In our flat, he went straight to his computer, started running diagnostics on the camera, on the memory card. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. It was Jana from the Heritage Foundation. "Hannah, I got your upload. The footage looks great, very atmospheric. We're scheduled to release the first clip tomorrow. Are you on track for the next batch?" I hadn't uploaded anything. I opened my laptop. There, in my project folder, was a completed video, edited, color-corrected, with narration. My voice, talking about the cemetery's history, but also saying things I hadn't recorded. Mentioning Peter Kovacs, mentioning the flooding, mentioning the hole. I checked the upload queue. It was set to go live at midnight. I tried to cancel it. The program froze. I forced quit, restarted. The upload was still scheduled. I tried to delete the file. It wouldn't delete. I got an error. File in use by system. I called Tomasz over. He tried everything. Admin privileges, terminal commands, safe mode. The file wouldn't budge. At 11:59 p.m., we watched the progress bar fill. At midnight, it vanished. Uploaded. Published. Tomasz looked at me. "What's the next video about?" I didn't know, but I knew I'd find out when I recorded it, because that's how it worked now. I'd go back to the cemetery. I'd set up my camera. I'd press record. And I'd hear my own voice telling me what I was about to say. The script was already written. The footage was already shot. I was just the vessel. That was 3 months ago. I've been back every day since. The grant ran out, but I keep going. Tomasz left last month. He said he couldn't watch me do this to myself. I don't blame him. I don't sleep much. I don't eat much. I just record. Every day, a new video appears on my laptop, fully edited. Every day, I upload it. The channel has 1,000 subscribers now. People leave comments. So atmospheric. So creepy. Can't wait for the next one. They don't know. They think it's fiction. Art. Yesterday, I found a new camera in the hole. A newer model. The video on it was dated 2032. I looked older. Tired. I was standing in the clearing, and I said, "I still don't know who writes the script. I still don't know why, but I know the hole is almost ready. He's almost ready, and when he is, I'll bring him what he wants. The footage, the memories, the names." The video ended with me walking toward the hole, the camera left behind. I went home and checked my upload schedule. Tomorrow's video is titled The Arrival. I haven't watched it yet.
I don't need to. I'll be there, in the clearing, saying words I don't understand, walking towards something I can't see. The script is already written. I just read what I'm going to say. I stopped asking who writes it. I stopped asking why. I just press record, and I listen to my own voice guide me deeper into the brambles, closer to the hole. The cicadas have stopped droning. They stopped weeks ago. Now it's just silence, and the whisper of my own voice, telling me what comes next. I don't fight it anymore. I just set up the tripod, check the levels, and wait for the prompt. The viewers are waiting, he's waiting, and I have a schedule to keep.